Good afternoon. All right. Good. Before I hand you over, as it were, to others who may have questions for you, can I just ask you one matter, please? It's to do with your statement at page 1361, and it's paragraph 81. I want to start at 80, if I may. Yes. Do you see it there, Mr. Piper? Do you have it?
Yes, sir.
Yes. I'll read it aloud. Kazim Ali and Dexter also never made any request to me during our conversations or at all for any LMCS representative to join the ICT, and never actually sent a representative as LMCS was invited to do by Paul. That's Yearwood, isn't it?
Correct, sir.
Right, prior to my arrival on site. And we've heard the evidence about
Yes,
Mr. Faisal, not Faisal, forgive me,
Mr. Farah.
Mr. Farah, thank you very much. Mr. Farah, as it were, being invited to come and attend, and just at that moment in time, Mr. Boudram was coming out of the pipe, so he turned around and went back.
Correct.
Right,
yes.
so that's where we are, and that's what you're dealing with here. You then go on to say this: in any event, LMCS, through Kazim Ali Sr. and Paria, the ICT, through me, were able to collaborate on the following measures taken in anticipation of attempting to rescue the divers. All right? So this paragraph is seeking, as I understand it by you, to say, well, what did you do with their cooperation to achieve the conditions for a rescue?
Correct.
That's what you're setting
Yes,
out there, isn't it? So can we just look at those briefly, please, and put some timelines on them so that I understand, all right? The first thing you identify is this: you made arrangements for the provision. I say you, I don't necessarily mean you personally, but the ICT or the...
Understood, sir, yes.
Making arrangements for the provision of a police escort, because of the outrageous traffic in this country, which I have suffered by, for LMCS additional drivers from Carenage, I was bound to get that wrong, to Port of Spain, all right?
Correct.
So somebody made a call and said to the police, look, we've got an emergency situation, bring those divers up super fast.
Correct.
Right? So you did that, and that would have been, well, we know the incident took place at 2:45. We know that Mr. Boudram came out of the pipe at 5:30-ish. So what sort of time are we talking about? After Boudram or pre-Boudram?
It's somewhere on, I'm not sure if it was on the timeline, but it was on somebody's statement.
It probably doesn't matter enormously.
Yeah, it would, I think, be pre-Boudram, I believe, because I think one of those divers was, might have been Conan Bell.
So we can chalk that up as something that you were able to achieve, as it were,
yes,
on behalf of effecting the right conditions for a rescue, yes? The second thing that you identify is this: the refilling by Paria of LMCS scuba tanks, their diving tanks, with air.
Correct.
Right? Now, I can tell you that we know that that's at 6:30 that evening, all right?
Okay.
So it's post-Boudram, but it's about 6:30 on the Friday evening. So you were able to fill up their tanks with air for them, all right? Then the third thing is this: the installation of the topside riser at berth 6. This is putting on the piece that takes it above the waterline, doesn't it?
That's correct,
Right.
sir.
That wasn't done until 10 o'clock on the Friday evening, all right?
Yes, correct.
Right, so just to put that into our timeline, as it were, 10 o'clock, that is about, it's approaching the 5-hour mark, isn't it, from when Mr. Boudram came out of the pipe?
Yes, sir.
It's certainly 4.5 hours thereabouts, all right?
Correct.
So that was the sort of window that you were thinking, realistically, that's about as far as we can go, and rescue people alive, isn't it? I know you put your caveat on that. We all sit there in hope rather than in despair, yes? The fourth thing that you were able to identify was the removal by LMCS of the blind flange from berth 5.
Correct.
I personally, at the moment, regard it as a rather dubious thing to do, and that's been identified by a number of people already. And there were some hours between the request being made for that to happen and it happening, because of how it might affect the equilibrium in the pipe. All right. So, but let's proceed on the basis that you regarded that as one of the preconditions to effecting a rescue. All right. That did not happen, did it, until 4:30 in the morning on Saturday. Mm-hmm. So well past any realistic timeline that we discussed earlier today. Correct?
Correct.
And then the fifth thing and final thing that you identify as being of relevance in making preparations for attempting a rescue was this: the removal by LMCS of the hyperbaric chamber, albeit they dropped it in the ocean, or somebody did. And that didn't happen until 6 o'clock on Saturday evening.
Correct.
By any view, they were likely dead.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Right. So all I wanted to understand is there anything else that you would like to add to that list of 5 things that you can say that you, together with LMCS, did in order to create the right environment for you to carry out a rescue?
Okay. So I think I need to explain this item here, right?
Yes, that's why I'm asking you about it.
Right. So here, really, what I'm speaking to is the collaborative effort, right? All, and of course, they not all to come together. For instance, number 4, the removal of the blind flange at berth number 5. We delayed that because we were still working with the crawler. The blind flange removal was to really get the crawler into the pipeline. Now, we were making all attempts from berth number 6 to find out what as best as we could. So that's why we delayed that.
Mr. Piper,
right?
forgive me, we've got that.
Right.
What I want to know is you put a list of 5 things together in your statement.
Right.
In your very lengthy statement.
Correct, yes.
Covering many, many aspects of this matter. Only some of which we've touched on in the live evidence, all right?
Correct.
I just want to understand, is this paragraph intended by you to reflect what you believe was the entirety of the things that you were able to put into place in a collaborative way with LMCS in anticipation of attempting a rescue? Because that's what you're saying there, isn't it?
Right. I'm saying those are some of the things we collaborated on. Yes, that's
not
what
you're
I'm saying.
Not
yes.
some of the things.
Uh-huh.
You're saying that's what you achieved. I want to know if at this stage you want to add anything to that list.
No, I think those are the things we were able to do. I think those are the things we were able to get through at that point in time.
Reflecting on that, do you think that that was adequate?
I'm not quite sure your question where you're leading to.
Well, don't
please
worry about where
forgive
it
me.
leads.
Forgive me.
Worry not where it leads. Can you answer it? Do you think that in the time that you were giving yourself for the what you call in anticipation of attempting to rescue the divers, do you think that this was sufficient? With the benefit of hindsight, I accept. But do you think this was sufficient effort by both of you, and is you and LMCS working together to create the environment in order to rescue these divers?
these are the physical things, right, we were able to do, right, together. Other than that, and in between here, the IMT, we were focusing on assessing the pipeline, as I keep saying. We were focusing on assessing. Once we had gotten any information, if there was anything else we could have done, we would have done. It was not that we just wanted to get these things and shut down, but anything that had come along at any point in time to aid in that rescue effort, we would have done.
Can I make some suggestions as what you might have done?
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
The first thing that you might have done would have been, you see that board up there, imagine that wasn't on that board. Mm-hmm. You might have put a timeline starting from when the accident happened to the time when Mr. Boudram came out, to the time that you estimated. You said 3 and then you added 4 and then it became 5, but whatever it is, whatever you might have thought was the reasonable timeline to save these men. And that you might have been working together with Mr. Kazim Ali and or Mr. Dexter Guerra or anyone else that you could get hold of from LMCS, that this is the timeline to which we are working. Get their agreement that that is the timeline to which you're working. Do you think that might have been something you could have done?
Yes, that could have been something we could have done in hindsight, but again, we all knew it was a tight timeline, and
yes,
we're working
feverishly. Having it up,
yes,
literally on the board. I mean, you've given us some documents,
yes, sir.
Photographs of the board that you had. We put various things on the board. The point about an IMT, as I understand it, you know far more than I do, I'm sure, but as I understand it, is to get the right people together in that room. You stay in that room, working on what needs to be done in a short space of time that you've given yourselves. Realistically, you had but hours, not days. We're agreed about that, are we not?
Yes, sir.
Right. So once you've got that, once you have that timeline and you have the agreement, particularly in this case, where LMCS had divers who they were directly related to. These are not some remote individuals. They were people that were related to them. You knew, man you've known for 30 years. His son was in that pipe. Another man whose father was in that pipe. Given those circumstances, working with LMCS on a time scale to see what could be achieved within that time scale is something that I suggest you could have done with LMCS.
Right, and so when I did make attempts, when Mr. Boudram came out of the pipe as well, I did make attempts to get in touch with Kazim Ali. It's in my statement.
Well, it is. But
and
you see,
I was unable to get in touch with him.
Well, forgive me, your own statement at paragraph 74 sets out, no doubt from you examining your telephone, the number of times you called Mr. Kazim Ali or tried to.
Yes, sir.
We know, don't we, that Mr. Boudram came out of the pipe at about 5:30-ish.
Yes.
It's 6:30 before you even try and call Mr. Kazim Ali.
Right, and during that time, we were occupied. I was certainly occupied in working with my group, right, and on how to approach it at that time. Yes, sir.
I know, but you know, it's his son who's in the pipe, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
And I just want you to. I'm trying to place myself in a situation that you would have been in. Okay, this is a man you've known for 30 years. Okay, his son is in that pipe. Renewed hope given to you all, because Boudram comes out of the pipe.
Of course.
And it's an hour before you call him.
Yes. Right. So I understand that, but please understand there were any number of things happening. I was talking with people, trying to find out, get information. So there was all of that happening at that point in time.
Well, get somebody else to call him then. you've got a whole team of staff to call him. All I'm trying to do is to understand, you see, whether what you're saying in this statement of paragraph 81 is a fair representation of what might have been achieved between you and LMCS. And I'm blaming you or them. I just want to understand the degree of collaboration that needed to be achieved in order to try and effect a proper rescue. All right? And you set out, not at our behest, but yourself, in a statement, what you say was the 5 things that you managed to achieve. I'm simply trying to understand whether now, with the benefit of hindsight, obviously, you could reflect on whether actually more might have been done, one of which is this timeline that you might have agreed between the two of you, so that you both understood where we were.
And that would have helped, sir.
It would have, wouldn't it?
Yes,
right?
yes.
The other thing I thought that you might have considered would have been to have pressed either Mr. Guerra or Kazim Ali, or anyone else, frankly, for that matter, at the LMCS, or divers that were expressing a willingness at an early stage to dive into the pipeline, give me a scheme. Like I think I asked you earlier, and I don't want to rehearse it, but I did ask you whether or not you had pressed anyone for a scheme, whether you pressed Mr. Guerra or anything else, and you dealt with that then.
Right.
But the point I want to try and raise with you now is in looking at the things that you did collaboratively, do you not think that it would have been helpful for you, as the head of the IMT, to have pressed those at the LMCS to come up with a plan that you could properly consider? Because, as I understand it, you say you never had such a plan, or it was never conveyed to you.
Right. So the rationale for me was we simply, and again, I'm going to repeat this, in my mind, we needed to really assess. Now, we did not know the dangers in that pipe, but we knew certain things in that pipe, right? So, not having that information, even if we came up with a simple plan, there were things in there that because we didn't know, we will not have been able to mitigate in any event, right? I cannot mitigate against what I don't know. So,
pausing there for a moment.
Yes,
I think that must be right, mustn't it? Can't mitigate about what you don't know.
Yeah.
On the other hand, there were only a number of potential scenarios, weren't there? You could presumably have a plan that would mitigate against each of those potential scenarios.
And so, for instance, I would not have known how far the men in, how much oil. Those things are very difficult to mitigate against, right? This really was just guesswork, right?
No, I follow that.
Right?
Look,
that would have been very, very difficult to me.
Piper, I accept entirely, right, that you did not know the conditions in the pipe. I accept that. Whether you could have informed yourself is another matter, which Mr. Maharaj has addressed, and others will no doubt do so also. But I accept your assertion that you did not know the conditions in the pipe, all right? The point I'm simply making is this. There are a number of potential issues that you have yourself raised. Was there a possibility of a second Delta P? What if the fluids were toxic in some way? A number of potential scenarios, all of which might have been mitigated. You might have said, well, if it's this, can we do that? Does it help? If it's that, can we do something else? Did you follow what I mean? Isn't that part of your job in the IMT, where there are unknowns, to take a rational view about what it could be, and then have a plan to deal with what could be? Did you regard that as your role?
Yes, sir.
Did you do that?
I did that to the extent, not with LMCS, but I would have done that. We would have discussed with the IMT somewhat. We would have discussed really is assessing, getting the information, right? We went to the specialists. They said no, right? Whether we put it down.
What I suppose I'm asking you, and I know you're trying to work it through in your own mind, is that, you see, if, for example, as you've told Mr. Maharaj, if, for example, you thought there was the existence of a second delta P as an issue,
right.
That's just an example, right? There are other issues I appreciate. But if that was the case, right, you write that on the board, don't you, onto your whiteboard. Yeah. Second delta P. Yeah. Right? And then another issue arises, you say, toxic fumes. Put that on the board. Yeah. Another issue arises, communication, or something like that. You put that on the board. So you identify all the potential hazards. Yeah. You put them all up on your board. And then you look to see, well, how can I fix that one? What can I do about that one? Right? So, for example, with delta P, you might say, if there's a second delta P, if they're tethered and they've got communications and they're in there for probably maybe no more than 15 minutes or something like that, can we assess that then as a risk ameliorated to this extent? Yeah. Do you follow that?
Oh, yeah, understood.
But, I mean, what I want to know, I suppose, and I know Mr. Wilson wants to know as well, is whether or not that exercise was entertained by you in collaboration with LMCS to say, this is the way forward for us in the time frame that we have.
No, I didn't do that with LMCS, sir.
Did you do it at all?
Well, yeah, we would have discussed it in the IMT, sir.
And I understand discussions, but I mean, there's nowhere that I can see where, that issue is identified as an issue contemporaneously, and here are the ways of dealing with it. There isn't, is there?
No, sir.
Right, okay. So, moving forward, because our job is not just to analyse what happens, but what are we going to recommend for the future? Yeah. Do you think that would be the right sort of approach in any scenario like this?
Yes, sir.
Right. And so, any recommendations that we might want to make in regard to this should reflect that kind of approach?
Correct.
Yes, sorry, I've taken a little time doing I just need to understand it from our point of view. Right, so who would like to ask Mr. Piper some questions? Don't all put your hands up at once. Right, well, what we'll hear from is Miss Alfonso, first of all. She'll have some questions for you. She is from the trade union. She'll introduce herself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Mr. Piper. My name is Enquiry Alfonso.
Good afternoon.
And I represent the interest of the Seaman and Waterfront Trade Union. Mr. Piper, just to take you back to something before we had the lunch break, in particular paragraph 131 of your witness statement, which is at 1368. That is a conversation, I'll let you get to it, but that is a conversation that you say, or an exchange that happened with Mr. Budram from the hospital. You recall it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, aside from saying, I don't think them fellas make it and so on, right? Mr. Budram says he crossed blacks who was unresponsive. Mm-hmm. Would that mean to you that Mr. Budram, would that equate in your mind that Mr. Budram was able to swim past blacks? I think that's Mr. Nagasar.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And then he says they left behind Kazim Jr. You say that he left.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So let me take you to 1541 of the supplemental core bundle, and Mr. Chairman, the ICT bundle, I beg your pardon. And this is the corrected version.
Volume 1 or 3?
Oh dear. Oh, how it was downloaded, we don't have volumes, but it is 1541. 1541, yeah. And that's in the corrected download.
Yes, I have.
Right. Now, I think because the handwriting is kind of like mine, quite bad, that is 9:58 at the top circled, yes? PM?
PSO.
On Friday, the 25th. Now, I don't see there anything about leaving people in, persons not making it, they're not making it, they haven't made it, and so on. And I wanted to, but more importantly, I want to take you to something that you say is also, this is a contemporaneous note, I should have asked you that first, made by the scribe, yes?
Right, ma'am. And we discussed this morning that there was also contemporaneous notes in the log.
And I'm taking you to the log next, Mr. Piper. So the log in relation to, too many tabs. Right, the log in relation to that conversation at 21:58 is at, sorry, the time is 21:58, the page number is 1574. In that same ICT bundle.
Yes, ma'am.
So you say that this, for my clarification, that this is now a contemporaneous typed version of, this is being typed contemporaneously. That was your evidence this morning? Did I get it right?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
Okay, thank you for that. So if I go to 1576, 2 pages on, where the note mysteriously stops at 2:10 in the afternoon, and I look at the bottom below that, is there a date there, Mr. Piper? On the right-hand side, I beg your pardon?
Yes, ma'am.
And a signature above it?
Yes.
Okay, and what date is that, Mr. Piper?
It says 2022, March 21st.
Okay, so if this is a contemporaneous note, how is it that it is dated in March?
Yeah, I just signed it then, ma'am. So I just dated it when I signed it.
That is your signature there?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
But this is contemporaneous. I can guarantee that.
You can guarantee that this is contemporaneous?
Yes, ma'am. These notes were being typed at the time of the incident live.
Okay, and the handwritten note that I referred you to a little while ago?
Yes.
At 9:58, that is contemporaneous as well?
I don't know who wrote that note, ma'am. I don't know who wrote that note, so I cannot assume. Okay. But I know this is contemporaneous.
Okay, these are the documents belatedly supplied by Paria. You don't know whose handwriting that is?
No, ma'am. I focus on this log, yeah.
Okay. But what you are saying is I think it's Miss Maharaj too, Shellyan Maharaj, is the one who typed these documents.
At that time, ma'am, Miss Maharaj was the person, typing this document on 1576.
Okay. Now, on 1537, if you go to 1537, you see the first item, notes taken by ICT scribe Shellyan Maharaj, Kenson, yes. Presumably she's a Kenson employee.
Yes, ma'am.
On the 25th of February.
Yes.
So when you say notes, you mean the typewritten notes or you mean the handwritten notes?
I can only tell you, ma'am, that Miss Shellyan Maharaj was in the ICT at the time taking these notes, right at the time of that the conversation with Ms. Abudram, and she was typing these notes contemporary as it happened.
Mr. Piper, I'll put to you that this note was developed after the fact. This note, and I beg your pardon, this typewritten note was developed after the fact.
Mr. Chairman, we are all lawyers. I mean, I'm not objecting, but I just would like to cross-examine the source of those instructions.
So please frame your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Mr. Piper, I'll put to you that the handwritten note is the contemporaneous note taken by Ms. Maharaj, a Kenson employee, and that the document, which is a typewritten version or part of the document, which is partially a recording and stops at 2:15 to 10, I think, was developed at a later stage.
Right. And I will tell you...
Just before you answer that question, first of all, let's just take one at a time, all right? The first question is whether you know whose handwriting appears on the pages between 1538 and 1549. Is that your question, the whole of that, or just the memo notes?
The handwritten memo notes.
The memo notes, so 1541, please. 1541 through to 1547. Are those memo notes? Do you know who wrote those?
No, sir. I don't know.
Can I ask you, before you move on to the second part of Ms. Alfonso's question, would you just flicking through that tell me if, in your view, that's written by the same hand or are there different people contributed to it?
The first section, the top of 1541,
yes,
seems to be different from the bottom.
Yes. Then the next page.
The next page seems to be different again.
Next page.
The next page may be this 1542, may be similar to 1543.
Yes. And then
maybe similar to 1544.
45.
45 maybe. 46 may be different.
Well, 45 looks like it's got 3 or 4 different contributions.
Yes.
46, right. So, and concomitant to what Ms. Alfonso's asking you, these are clearly handwritten notes.
Yes.
Did you see anyone making handwritten notes on a memo pad in the IMT?
No.
At any time?
No. Not the scribe.
Well, someone's scribbling down, aren't they? If it's contemporaneous, they're either in there or someone's giving them this information at some other point.
Yes, correct. I didn't see people taking these notes there.
Right, so you're not able to help us, or Miss Alfonso, as to who this was, or however many it might have been.
Right, no, sir.
Or whether they were in the IMT at the same time as the information was being passed.
That's correct.
Neither are you able to identify the provenance of this memo pad.
No, I can't.
Okay, well, that's not very helpful, I'm afraid.
Unfortunately.
But that's where we are. The second part of her question is whether or not the typewritten note that is apparently ascribed to Miss Shelley Ann Maharaj is a contemporaneous record as it was happening.
Yes.
Right. First of all, I don't suppose you did check every entry because you already told me you didn't know certain entries. So, but was there a person in the IMT keeping a record?
Right. So, and are we speaking of this specific entry?
No, we're talking about this whole record.
Oh, yes, there was, right.
I take it that's what you were after, Miss Alfonso, isn't
Indeed.
it? Yes, the whole of this typewritten record.
Right. In the IMT, we had somebody stationed at their laptop continuously taking records and typing.
Do you believe this to be that document?
Yes, sir, I believe this to be that document.
And was it Miss Shelley Ann Maharaj who was doing the typing?
Yes, she was doing the typing for not all of the time, of course, right? They were rotating, but at the time it was Miss Shelley Ann Maharaj. At the time when Mr. Boudram called, she had taken that note.
Right.
Made that entry.
Sorry, Miss Alfonso, just because I'm dealing with this now, I asked you before the lunch whether or not that was the entirety of the record, and you said clearly it was not.
It was not.
No. What is clear, though, from it is that you've signed it on the 21st of March as being the record.
Yes, sir.
Those 5 pages. There clearly are more pages.
Yes, there are more pages, sir, and they should have been submitted.
Right.
But
well, they're
aren't.
not in our bundles, and I don't believe they are, but I'm certainly open to being disabused of that thought. But if they're not, can you ensure that we have them, please?
Yes, sir.
Once
I
you
will
leave
do.
that witness box.
Yes.
Thank you. And so I pass you back to Miss Alfonso, who was asking you specifically about this now. You were, I think, at some stage seeking to put that this was not contemporaneous. Before you can put such a suggestion, you'd need the source of that assertion. You can suggest, is it true that you're saying this was made contemporaneously, but in the absence of having any other independent evidence that it was not contemporaneous, you cannot put it as a positive assertion.
Thank you, sir. Before I leave this point, Mr. Piper, you said that there were different persons at different times stationed at a laptop or their laptops, as the case may be, making these notes?
Yes, ma'am.
Because we start off on Friday, of course, and we end on Saturday afternoon, as far as we have.
Yes, yes, ma'am. And as I said, I know for a fact people were taking notes. Okay. So I know for a fact there is the document.
So could I ask you to explain, Mr. Piper, if different people are making the note, why does it end, as far as we have, why does the note end on 1576, saying prepared by Shelley Ann Maharaj? There's only one name there. I take it that's your signature on the right-hand side above the date?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So why does it say it's prepared only by this person?
I don't know why only by this person, ma'am, but Shelley Ann is the person who started it off, right? And she just sent off the documents for signature, right? But she was not writing this document.
Okay, she's typing the document, if I follow you, yes?
No. This document was done by somebody sitting in the ICT, right, and typing as the information was coming in. The person, they were rotating the people, right? Shelley Ann may have just put her name there and sent it off for my signature. But the document was done as the ICT was, as the incident unfolded.
So as I'm corrected by the Honorable Chairman, I can only suggest to you that there's one name there as having prepared the document because this document was prepared at a later date.
Right, ma'am, and I'm suggesting to you, and I'm saying the same thing to you. Just a moment.
Disagree.
He's asking you the way that you're being asked this is not an appropriate way. What I think she's asking is whether or not you can be satisfied so that you are sure or confident that this is an accurate representation of the contemporaneous note that was being made at the time, and it was being made at the time.
Yes, sir.
There's no evidence to suggest that it is not so.
Correct.
But you're satisfied that it is so.
I'm satisfied that it is
right.
so.
I don't think I can take it any further.
And I'm not going to take it any further, sir. Just to carry it back to 1541, that handwritten note that we don't know who made it. It ends with something which, as far as I can tell, saying, fell too well seems.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is that, okay, I don't know anything about pipelines. Does that suggest to you, Mr. Piper, something about distance?
Yes.
If Mr. Budram says, I passed two well seams,
yes.
Is there something that you can take away from this with respect to the distance that he traveled?
Right. Yes. Well, the pipes are normally about 40 feet length, right? Now, 40 feet length, right? So there you're looking maybe 120 feet. But bear in mind that Mr. Budram, there are several well seams Mr. Budram would have missed or could have missed. So that doesn't really give me that indication. So he may have just touched two well seams. That's all.
Mr. Piper?
Well seams are very
So
thin.
I take it from your answer that perhaps every 40 feet or so in the pipe,
yes,
there will be a well seam, so that various components of the pipe are welded together. Yes? So that's what a well seam means, yes?
Yes.
Good. So that Mr. Budram doesn't have any light and is feeling his way through this water-filled, some oil pipe. And one of the ways that he is estimating his passage is two well seams. So you said that's, if it's every 40 feet, wouldn't that be 80 feet?
Well, you'll have to add 3 pipe lengths of pipe, so that's 120 feet.
Okay, so I accept that, 120 feet.
Yeah.
So Mr. Boodram, in relaying this information to whomsoever this particular scribe is attempting to give something about distance, yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Right.
So I want to bring you back to where we were this morning, so that the persons who could tell you something, it was vitally important to the ICT team which you headed to understand something or everything for that matter about the pipe conditions, about what the location of the divers. Wasn't that important information that you knew at least if he missed one, he was estimating, as you say, 120 feet that he had traversed in the pipe? Right or wrong, missed some, picked up some?
Could have been 500 feet.
Okay, Mr. Piper, I will just put it to you that I say he was providing this information so that you get an idea of the location of his brothers, his fellow divers.
No, ma'am, I didn't interpret that way.
Might I inquire, Mr. Piper, how you interpreted it?
He just said, touch too well, it seems, right? It could have been close out when he was close out. I don't know.
But
right? There are right? He's going along the pipe. There'll be several welded seams, right? When we did get a camera in, we didn't see anything.
Meaning anything what? Any welded seams?
We didn't see anything. No, we wouldn't pick up the welded seams there. Okay. But when we get the camera, we didn't see. We got in about maybe 80 feet and we didn't see anything.
So, Mr. Piper, you have this conversation which you detail, well, somebody details in handwritten notes, and you detail in your witness statement at 131. Did anybody, the people in the room who you say were on the speakerphone would be people who understand pipes and distances and all manner of things. Did anybody ask Mr. Boodram if he could estimate the distance that he swam in order to come out to the top of the riser?
Ma'am, we
or
didn't.
The bottom of the riser, to be fair, the bottom of the riser.
Our conversation with Mr. Boodram was very short, right? And the EMT who was with him had to quickly shut down the conversation. We had a very, very limited time.
Okay. So my question, Mr. Piper, is did you ask Mr. Boodram before the very brief conversation? I'm not too sure why the conversation is brief, but in the brief exchange, did you ask him, could he estimate where he had come from, where his fellow divers, he left his fellow divers,
right,
and where he had come from?
Right. So, ma'am, miss, the way the conversation started, I documented how the conversation started, and we were trying to find out the condition of the divers, right, at that time. By the time we got there, Mr. Boodram, they had to cut the conversation with Mr. Boodram. So we will not be able to get any further.
Well, let me ask you that, Mr. Piper. Why did you have to cut short your conversation with Mr. with Mr. Boodram?
That was all the time the EMT was allowed, and he had to quickly leave. They had, in fact, told him, I believe, 1 minute, right? And we spoke for a little more than a minute. The EMT said, listen, I need to go immediately, right? And that has to do with the medical stuff.
Okay. Well, I imagine Mr. Boodram was injured and he would be receiving treatment in the hospital, yes?
Yes, ma'am, and we had to be guided by the medical fraternity.
Okay. But you, Mr. Piper, as head of the ICT, when is the first time, let me ask you the question, when is the first time that you instructed somebody from Paria, Kenson, anybody under your control, to go to the hospital to talk to Mr. Boodram?
Right.
We've dealt with this. It's at page 1573. At 2035, Mr. Shan Balkisoon was dispatched to the hospital by Mr. Piper. He told me that when I asked him about it.
Thank you, and I have that in my note. I was just asking Mr. Piper. But Mr. Piper, so it's not until 2 hours after Mr. Boodram, 2 hours and a little bit, after Mr. Boodram is rescued, that it dawned on somebody, including yourself, to send somebody to the hospital.
Right. So
it's
again,
actually 3 hours.
3 hours, yes. My bad mathematics. I have terrible mathematics.
Yeah.
Out of the pipe at 5:35, or roughly 5:30.
And this is now
It's now
8:35. I beg your
8:30.
pardon. 3 hours. So 3 hours. I'm not talking about when you actually spoke to him and the phone was used and so on. It is, from what I read in the log, it is 3 hours before you dispatch, not the people reach the hospital. It is 3 hours before you instruct somebody or somebody is instructed to go and to speak to Mr. Boudram.
Right. So, I mean, as the incident commander, I depend on people. It should not be. I don't have to make every instruction. I depend on a team, right? I was busy as the incident commander with a lot of things, trying to get assessments. There was a lot of conversation going on. There were a lot of things happening at the same time. As I got back around, were we able to contact Mr. Boudram? Right, I would have asked. Did anybody send Mr. Boudram? I had a team to help me with these things, right? Because by then I hopefully would have been able to talk to Mr. Boudram. Once I understood, no, we had not dispatched Mr. Boudram, I passed the instruction immediately. Right? But I have a
I think
team
we've
to
covered
work
this
with me.
ground now.
Okay.
We've covered this
Okay.
ground.
Would you consider, Mr. Piper, you were depending on members of your team? You just said that, you were depending on members of your team to do things like go to the hospital and so on. Would you, in your view, would that be I want to be very kind, a shortcoming on the team not to have done that at an earlier stage?
Well,
I didn't say you said you're depending on other members of the team.
yes, maybe they should have had somebody there earlier. In any event, when Mr. Ramkisoon got there, it took more than an hour and a half before we were able. In fact, it took about an hour to an hour and a half before we were able to speak to Mr. Boudram. He was not allowed to. They were attending to Mr. Boudram, and he was not allowed to. Right? I would imagine when Mr. Boudram came out of the pipe, one of the focus was we trying to see if there was anybody else coming out of the pipe. We were trying to focus on that among other things. So, and within the first hour or so, maybe, right, they would have been attending to Mr. Boudram. They had to stabilize him, right? So, and again, as I said, it took about another hour before we were able to speak to him.
Okay, Mr. Piper, let me ask you something from what you just said there. You would be aware that when I don't know, that's a terrible mistake. You would be aware that when Mr. Boudram came out of the pipe, swam out from the pipe, swam into the water and so on, he was brought up onto the barge, onto LMCS's barge. And you had personnel there, yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so another opportunity was missed there that Mr. Boudram was lying down, I presume, there being attended to by one of your own personnel, yes?
Yes.
And that certain information about what was going on in the pipe could be elicited at that point in time?
Mr. Boudram, you have to, Mr. Boudram came out of a pipeline that he had been in for some time. Mr. Boudram, as far as my information was not oriented with time and place. Mr. Boudram was in a traumatic condition. He had to be, right? You had to attend to Mr. Boudram. You had to attend to his safety. You had to attend to his well-being, right? That was a priority. During that time, we would have had an EMT there. I understand that Mr. Boudram just kept repeating, the guys behind me, the guys behind me, right? They had to quickly get him onto the launch, but that was all they were able to get from Mr. Boudram, to the best of my understanding.
Okay.
When Mr. Boudram came to when he came ashore, right, I had the safety officer, Mr. Paul Yearwood there again, right? Mr. Yearwood tried to get information from Mr. Budram once again. Mr. Yearwood advised me that all Mr. Budram kept saying is the right behind me, go and get them. The men there, go and get them. And within a minute or so, Mr. Budram was off in the ambulance by the GMRTT. They quickly grabbed him and took him off to attend to Mr. Budram. So there was only that opportunity, right, in which she was not very coherent.
Okay, Mr. Piper.
Who was the, just a moment please, who was the HSE gentleman who assisted him when he came out of the pipe? Because I thought, Dobson, isn't it? Thank you, yes, because he had something to say about this. Just a moment, please. Dobson, where's Dobson? Where do I find Mr. Dobson's statement? It's in the supplemental statement, yes. Yes, that's the other thing. Yes, thank you very much. Yes. But where's Mr. Dobson's account? Yes, 3020. Yes. There are two different matters. Mr. Dobson was the man who was present when he came out of the pipe. He says at statement 3024 in the supplemental bundle, he says the following. It's only fair that you should know this, all right? This is what he said. I observed Mr. Budram was pulled from the chamber by Cody and Ramutar. I assisted getting Mr. Budram safely onto the deck, performed a rapid body scan assessment on him to determine if he sustained any trauma. He used a knife. I used a knife to expose his bodysuit. I observed trauma to the left side of his face, left arm, left torso, and right ankle. There were no exposed body bones or bleeding. I used a rag to clean his mouth, eyes, and ears due to the presence of hydrocarbon on his entire suit body. Mr. Budram was moaning and appeared to be in pain, unsurprising. In my presence, Mr. Budram was transported back to shore, and upon reaching the launch, I handed him over to ambulance staff. That's what he said. I know I asked him some questions about that as well. But then in your incident timeline, your contemporaneous document, which you were being given information about, that is contained, I'll get my copy on it, page 1091. Yes, actually it's 1572 of the new supplemental core bundle, which is the one that's up there, yes. You've got that, I think, in front of you. It's at page 1572. 6:10. Mr. Budram attended by EMTs, treated for muscular injury. Patient was alert and conscious. See that?
Yes, sir.
Complained of pain in his right shoulder. Well, that I would think was probably the least of his problems, having managed to get out of that pipe. But the fact is, he was described to you and therefore entered into the log, I don't mean you personally, the EMT, treated for muscular injury, patient was alert and conscious. So that's the information that we had, and I know I certainly asked the witness about it when he was giving his evidence, and I shall turn that note up later. I find it now because I haven't got that pad with me. But so that was the position. So was it your understanding then that he was both alert and conscious?
Yes. And when I spoke to Mr. Yearwood, right, he told me Mr. Boodram just kept repeating, go for them, go for them.
Yes.
And he had very limited time. He wasn't able to really speak to Mr. Boodram.
Well, we'll ask Mr. Yearwood about it but when he gives evidence. All right, but that's where we are. So I think it's only fair that he has a full picture if you're going to be asking him about that. All right?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think it's only fair to the witness that he be shown the witness statement of Mr. Paul Yearwood at 1307, paragraph 30 in particular.
Yearwood's statement. It's in bundle 4.
1307, paragraph 30.
Just a minute.
Okay, I beg your pardon. I should really say, for narrative purposes, it starts at 29.
Yes.
And goes on to 30 at the top of the next page.
Paragraph 39.
No. Starts at 29.
29, sorry.
And the more relevant section or part is paragraph 30, which starts at the top of the next page. Could I, Mr.
Please put it to him, yes.
Okay.
Those, paraphrase it if you can.
Okay. So, Mr. Piper, have you read paragraph 30 of Mr. Yearwood?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, Mr. Yearwood, who is your eyes and ears on the birth at that time, you sent Mr. Yearwood down to meet Mr. Boodram, yes?
No, I didn't send him.
Okay, he was
went,
there.
yes.
He was there. Okay, my apologies. So Mr. Boodram was able to communicate with people on site and used a cell phone to contact a person whom he identified as his wife. Mm-hmm. Mr. Boodram gave evidence of that when he was, I think he was the first witness, if I recall. Mm-hmm. So what do you say now? I'm not saying Mr. Boodram was not traumatized, but Mr. Boodram was lucid. Mr. Boodram was speaking. Mr. Boodram was not just saying over and over, go and get the guys, go and get the guys. So all of this happened here. So do you still say, is that still your position, Mr. Piper, that Mr. Boodram was not able to be communicated with to get information that could assist in a rescue?
Yes, ma'am. I'm still saying what I can tell you what I was when I spoke to Mr. Paul Yearwood, right? Mr. Boodram just kept repeating, right? He told me Mr. Boodram just kept repeating that go get them guys, right? And they whisked him away very quickly in the ambulance. That was my conversation with him.
Does that accord, that version, what you just said there, does that accord at all with Mr. Yearwood's own words in paragraph 30?
No, ma'am, that does not align, but that is what I
like that term, align. I like that too. So it doesn't align because Mr. Boodram in his own evidence, I can't say that you would have heard Mr. Boodram's evidence, but we here heard his evidence, that he was asking to speak to his wife, asking to call his wife, who I believe is a nurse. He was asking for hyperbaric chamber. He was asking for people to go back and rescue his colleagues, his fellow divers, not just saying go back.
In my conversation with my team, that was the information I had at the time.
Okay, when Mr. Yearwood comes to give evidence, Mr. Piper, we will certainly ask him that. But so all I can tell you, I believe Mr. Yearwood, who is the person on the scene, that you've admitted is on the scene, is giving a true account of what he witnessed, heard, what he witnessed, what he heard, what he saw when Mr. Boodram was on the land. And what you are saying, and I use your term, does not align with that narrative.
Yes, ma'am. That is what that in the discussions, that is what I was told, yes.
I'll leave that alone. Mr. Yearwood will come and we will ask him the appropriate questions. Now, Mr. Piper, again, I'll go back to the ICT team of which you were the head were very concerned about the conditions in the pipe. So you had two people who knew something about the conditions in the pipe, Mr. Michael Kurban, Mr. Boudram. Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I wouldn't take you back through Mr. Kurban because no real questioning of Mr. Kurban took place. Yeah? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So in your mind, you wanted to know the conditions of the pipeline, and you felt that the only route to that would be to get some sort of camera, however designed, whether on a ROV, whether on a boroscope, some kind of camera footage of the area. But
Ms. Alfonso, we have
okay, and
some length,
okay, yes,
both by me and by Mr. Maharaj. So please, if you have a specific question about this area, just ask that question.
I will. And Mr. Piper, did it occur to you at all that all you were trying to achieve and you were not getting those cameras in a quick time? Did it occur to you that sending a diver with the appropriate camera equipment, with video, audio, this is what I think Mr. Alvin Sitaram would have said, that the equipment that they had on the Water World would allow them to have video, audio, as well as the air, of course, all bundled in one thing. Did it occur to you could send a diver to get that information, that same information, the conditions of the pipe, where the plug was, where the divers were? Did it occur to you?
Ma'am.
I didn't even use the word rescue. Did it occur to you you could send a diver tethered with surface air, with video, audio, and everything to go down into the pipe to see if he could locate the divers?
You are asking me, and I have said repeatedly, you are asking me to send a man in a pipe, 30-inch diameter. I don't know the conditions in that pipe, right?
Okay, so the answer is the same as you've given already.
Okay, and
yes, sir. I had a decision to make. This was no simple time. This was no, you see, we sit here in this room and we believe that this was just something that was not stressful, right? We believe in this room here that this was not something that we were under strain, we were under pressure, right? That is the furthest thing from the truth. And we can sit in this room and believe what we want to believe, but put yourself in that position on that night. Put yourself in that position on that evening when you have to make a decision to send a man into a pipeline a quarter of a mile long. You have no idea where this man is going. You have no idea what this man is going to face. You have no idea. You are accountable for this man. You have that accountability. Once you sanction sending that man in that pipe, you are accountable for that man's life. And if you believe in this room that that was a simple thing because we had 4 men in that pipe, if you believe that I just sat there and decided I'm just not sending a man in a pipe, right? You simply do not understand what we went through that night. That is not something I want anybody in this room or anybody at all to have to go through and to make a decision. That is not a simple decision, as we feel to believe you just send a man and pull him out with a rope. That is not a decision like that. That is that man's life. I had 4 men in that pipe. 4 men. I had husbands in that pipe. I had fathers in that pipe. I had sons in that pipe. Whose father should I have allowed and sanctioned to go down in that pipe? Again, whose son should I have allowed to go down in that pipe? Right? Whose husband should I sanction to go down in that pipe and perish? I have run this through my mind on many occasions, and I still do. And let me tell you something. I understand Mr. Kirban, because somebody is in the back is talking about whose son. I understand Mr. Kirban's courage because his father was in the pipe. I understand why Mr. Kirban will want to go into that pipe. And if I was a son, yes. But I've also looked at this on the reverse. If I was the father in that pipe, would I want somebody to send my son into that pipe after me in a reckless manner where he could perish? And every time I asked myself that question, my answer was no. I will not want anybody to be so reckless with my son's life. So if you believe in this room that that was simple for me and simple for the IMT, what would I have done? Would I have done said, well, listen, I can't get the information, just send somebody in the pipe? That would be totally reckless. Totally reckless. And then, do you understand what I'm saying? Do you understand what we were faced with?
All right. You were entitled to have your say. You were asked the question and you've given a very comprehensive answer. And I'm sure everyone understands that it was not easy for you either. But coming back to where we are now, Ms. Alfonso, do you have any other questions to ask?
Yes,
Right.
Mr. Chairman, I do. But I will, I understand, I don't think you had an easy job, Mr. Piper. So there's not, I'm not sitting down here as the armchair critic of
Could you just ask the question?
Right?
I don't think you understand.
Okay, fair
Mr.
enough.
Piper,
Okay,
I've allowed you to have your
sorry,
say.
sir.
No, that's all right. You're entitled to your say. You were asked the question, and I didn't stop you because you were entitled to have what you wanted to say. All of us here will assess that in addition to everything else we've heard, all right? If there are questions, please ask the question.
I will do so. Thank you, sir. Mr. Piper, as I understand it, you felt you had a duty to protect the would-be rescuers. Yes? The
Yes.
people who wanted to effect a rescue, you had a duty to protect those people.
Yes.
I understand that. That is understandable. Did you feel also, Mr. Piper, that you had a duty to the 4 workmen, the 4 divers who were stricken?
He's already said he felt that. He's taken some time to make it clear that he felt for them too and the reasons why he approached it the way he did. He spoke about the way in which he would feel if he was one of the people in the pipe and it was his son on the outside. He's done all of that. So unless there's something else that you want to ask.
Okay, yes, let me get
Please.
on to yesterday. Thank you, sir. Yesterday, Mr. Piper, you would have referred us to, so let me be a little more clinical. Yesterday, you would have referred us to something from the 1980s. You referred us to something about rescuers who find themselves in difficulties, and you said something about, if I recall your figures, if there's 16 people dead in a rescue, 10 were the rescuers. You recall that?
Yes, ma'am. I said there were eight cases then, and of the 8 cases, 16 died, 10 were rescuers.
Okay. So I also, when I was quite alarmed when I saw that myself. So I had a little look through some OSH reports and so on with respect to rescuers and so on. And in fact, there was quite a big study in 2018, I think, of about 100 deaths that had occurred while persons were going into confined spaces to effect rescues. My takeaway from that study was that the persons who perished, the rescuers who perished, were what they referred to as would-be rescuers, which I understand to be, Mr. Piper, persons who on the spur of the moment rush into an area where maybe there's carbon monoxide or some other toxic fumes, which was by and large what those deaths occurred, took it. But no training, no equipment, just spur on the moment. That is my understanding from the study, which is a study, by the way, that is in 2018, not the 1980s, but it referred to a 1980s study, so I assume they're linked somehow. So would you agree, Mr. Piper, there would be a difference between the would-be rescuer, the ones who rush in without a plan, without equipment, without proper, in this case, tendering and equipment to do the dive? Is there not a difference between, say, what you thought of Michael Kerban's attempt to rescue his father? Is there not a difference when Mr. Bedo and Mr. Ramuta and these other people came and the other equipped dive ships came with equipment? Is there not a difference between that kind of rescue operation?
Can you try to keep the answer shorter than the question?
I'm not sure if we're understanding. You are sending a man into a pipeline for hydrocarbon spaces, oil. He has no training. You are sending them out. It is not different. He may have equipment. It is not different. He doesn't know what he's going to face, how he is going to deal with it. This is not simple. This was never simple.
No, I don't think
it's
anyone...
It's a quarter mile long.
Yeah, Mr. Piper, I think we get that sentiment. I don't think anyone has suggested for one moment that the task was a simple one. No one has made that suggestion. If they did, I would have stopped them. All right? No one's suggesting the task was easy. These tasks are never easy. That's why they pick, hopefully, the right people to do them. The question ultimately is whether, on reflection now, you think you got it right.
Yes, sir.
Right. Well, I got that
yes.
because you've told us. You don't think that, well, apart from the things you've identified where you think you might have done things differently, fact is, you don't think you made the wrong decision in deciding not to send anybody into that pipe until you had a video footage of what the conditions in that pipe were like. That's where we got to, as I understood it, right?
Yes, sir.
Right. I don't think no one's trying to shift you from that position. We're simply exploring it, all right? And your position remains the same.
Yes, sir.
The same as it was when you walked into that witness box as it is now, as you shortly will hopefully leave it, all right? So I'm not sure that there's much to be gained from asking the questions, which seem to me to just elicit the same answer time and again.
I'm moving on, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Piper, are you aware, you know Andrew Farrar, the diver, Andrew Farrar?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Are you aware that Mr. Farrar has experience in diving into pipes?
No, ma'am. You want to elaborate? When you say diving into pipes, what do you mean?
Pipes at, well, I have to say Petrotrin. If we go to
yes, I am. Yes, may I?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, right. So I am aware, right, that we were doing a job at berth number 6, right? I am aware we were doing a job at berth number 6, where someone, I don't know if it is Andrew Farrar, right, would have entered a riser, right? This riser would have been, I think it would have been a 50-inch, well, number 6 is 50-inch and 48-inch in some areas, right? This would have been a 50-inch riser. They were renewing this riser at berth number 6 on 66 Sea Line. I vaguely remember some discussions with Mr. Kazim Ali, as you mentioned, Point up here. I vaguely remember some discussions with Mr. Kazim Ali where they were putting on this riser and it had an elbow about 10 feet long, the elbow. And they were having some problems with the joint. This was a new riser. It was a 50-inch riser, diameter riser. There was no oil in this riser. This line was flush, so there was no oil in the line, right? And he was just going to slip in this he was just going to align this gasket, the flange gasket, right? Right. In this case, they would have had, as the flange is coming together, they would have had divers on the other side. So he was just going down into this clean 50-inch diameter riser and back up, right? If we want to say that is experience in diving in a pipe, I cannot argue that that is experience.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Mr. Piper. Mr. Piper, I just have one or two more questions for you. I'm going to leave that one alone. Yeah, I want to go to the chairman would have referred you to a short window in which the divers were likely to be alive, yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so whether it's 4, 5, 6 hours, as the case may be. At what point in time, Mr. Piper, as the head of the ICT, would you say that Paria moved from a plan or took a decision to move to a recovery effort rather than a rescue effort?
Haven't we dealt with this already?
Could I just ask kindly that Mr. Piper just give me the timeline, because I'm seeing some conflicting information elsewhere.
Right.
Did there come a particular time when you made the decision they are no longer alive?
No, the decision that
Right. There were, again, this was as a person, right? I wasn't just an incident commander. I'm a person, right? This was another very difficult thing for me to just suddenly accept. So this was a transition in my mind, right? So there are a number of things happening here. Somewhere around 4:30 on Saturday, the general manager, Mr. Mohammed, Mr. Michael Way, and myself, we attended a meeting outside of the ICT room, and we attended a meeting with Heritage. During that meeting, and this was on Saturday afternoon, somewhere between 4:30. All that time, because this is important, we were still in the rescue mode, making arrangements to get to pump out this riser, right? Excuse me. We were arranging pumps and so on. We were still talking about rescue with the incident command. At that meeting, we discussed moving from rescue to recovery, right? And what are some of the ways, if we move from rescue to recovery, what are some of the things we're going to have to put in place? when I left that meeting with Mr. Mohammed. On the way back to the ICT, we discussed what I just, we went over the discussions with Heritage. We came to the place, Mr. Mohammed and I, that, listen, we think we're losing hope here now, right? The chances here are slim to none. So together, we came to that place where, listen, we're going to have to move to recovery. I repeat, that was on Saturday. This may be around 4:30, 5 now, maybe 4:30. We kept that decision to ourselves, right? The reason being, we wanted to speak to the families first, right? So we didn't want the information. We had to treat very respectfully. So we didn't say anything at that point in time to anybody for that reason. So that would be around the time, right? Mr. Mohammed contacted Mr. Ali, and we met with Mr. Ali. Okay? So that would have been around the time to discuss recovery. That would have been around the time.
Thank you, Mr. Piper. That will be all. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
And that's contained in paragraph 177 of your statement. So the position is that by Saturday afternoon, could we say at the very latest, you had to reconcile in your own mind that they were almost certainly dead?
Yes, sir, I had to reconcile in my mind. Yes, sir.
And you already made it clear that realistically and objectively, they probably only had a timeline of a few hours.
Yes, sir.
All right. Yes, Mr. Ramadan. How long do you think you're going to be, Mr. Ramadan? You said, I think earlier, about half an hour. Yes. That will take us to getting on to 4 o'clock. Mr. Pegas, do you have any questions at the moment?
If I do.
Just
sorry,
Mr. Pegas. You need to turn your microphone on.
Right. No, Mr. Chairman, I don't have any questions for this witness.
So I'll leave the front bench afterwards. All right. So we'll have your questions. Do the best you can, please.
I will, of course.
The sooner we finish here, the sooner we can all go home. But what I may do, depending on what the others say, is to have a short 5-minute breaks after you. All right. So of course. Mr. Ramadan will introduce himself, Mr.
Yes.
Piper.
My name is Prakash Ramadan. I represent Aliyah Henry, the daughter of Yusuf Henry, and the family of Faisal Kurban. Okay?
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon to you. Now, Mr. Piper, we have had no interaction before today. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
So I want you to know that whatever shall come now is not personal. Okay? And equally, I sympathize with the position that you would have put yourself in as commander. Okay? Not easy, as we all appreciate. Yes? However, you were not the average citizen of Trinidad and Tobago that day. You're not the average citizen. You're the commander of an incident management team. Isn't that true?
That's correct, sir.
And therefore, one would expect that you're made of very hardy stuff in terms of dealing with catastrophes and very difficult decisions. Isn't that correct?
I'm very human.
Human, yes. But I am a lawyer. I'm a human first. But when I stand here, I don't represent me. I represent my clients. And whether you like it or not, I have to do so. Whether I enjoy doing what I have to do with you today is irrelevant. So you are human first. We get that. You are the commander of the incident command team. You agree with that?
Yes, sir. I
And therefore
can't
that
deny
takes you to a high status of responsibility. Yes?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Now, what special training did you have to obtain such a lofty position as commander of the incident command team?
Yes, sir. I was on the Petrotrin. I was trained, ICS trained.
I don't understand what does ICS training mean.
Incident Command System
Right.
trained.
Tell us, what does that mean? Are you formally trained to deal with incidents of such a violent and horrific nature, the outcome?
You are trained to deal with incidents. You are trained. It's the system,
Yeah.
right? The Incident Command System can apply to many, many things.
Yes.
Right? This was a real highly unusual system. Incident, but the system applies.
System applies. When did you undergo that training?
This was under Petrotrin, sir.
That is not a when, that's a when.
So I cannot remember the exact
Yeah.
the year.
When was your refresher, the last refresher you had? Because as Ms. Alfonso put in a way, but I think we should get it clear, the technology and training of 1980 is not the technology and training of 2022. You appreciate that? Yes?
Of course.
Yes. When was the last bit of refresher training you had in incident management?
I haven't had any refresher recently, but we have managed incidents.
Of course. And how many died in those incidents?
Fortunately, we've had not had any of those incidents.
Since when?
This is the first time in this type of incidents we have had deaths.
In the years that you were at Petrotrin?
Yes, sir, me personally, yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So therefore, this would be a most significant moment in terms of your management, isn't it?
This is significant, sir, but
Yes.
the system remains.
Listen, we could have the best system and you put rubbish in it. You get a rubbish outcome. You agree with that? You're a technical man. Garbage in, garbage out. Yeah?
I am tending to take offense at that, sir.
No, don't take offense. Men died. Don't be so thin-skinned. Are you a crybaby too? Do you intend to cry here today?
Enough.
I-
Just a minute, Mr. Piper. Just a minute. First of all, the expression garbage in, garbage out is probably unnecessary. There are other ways of putting that question.
Yes.
And certainly I don't need any suggestion that he's a crybaby.
Yes.
All right? Please.
Of course. I'm just being preventative. Please.
We're going to be here for an awful long time if I have to keep interrupting you. I'd rather
I
not.
hope you don't interrupt, and I shall not do anything to endeavor
I'd rather have
your
no
interruption.
reason to do so.
If you do, of course. So, garbage in is garbage out is not an insult to you, sir. It is a,
I take it as an insult,
let
sir.
me tell you what it is if you don't know. It is a technical term in terms of computer science. You put in garbage, you get garbage out.
Chairman, please.
Quality
I mean, it's
of
been a
info.
long day. I don't think I should be subjected to this. I honestly, sorry, I don't think I should be subjected to
Just a moment. I don't know how plain I can make it. But I don't think it's necessary to use that expression.
Of course.
Please don't use it again.
I shan't. I was just apologizing
I don't want to
in
hear
a
an
indirect
explanation
way.
about it. I don't want to hear any apology
Done.
about it.
Thank you.
Just don't use it.
Thank
all
you
right?
very much, of
You
course.
can make the same point in a different way.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Now, in terms of the information you get, you make decisions based on it. You get good information, you are better able to make better decisions. You agree with that?
Yes, sir.
And if you get bad information, the likelihood of you making a bad decision is more likely, isn't it?
You will make the best decision based on the information you have.
And if it's bad information, what kind of decision you expect?
You will make the best decision based on the information you have.
Now, from what you described here today, you made the best decisions. Difficult as it would have been, in your mind, you made the best decision.
Yes, sir. Based on the information I had, yes, sir.
So
I
what we
made
have,
that.
no dead rescuers, but 4 dead divers. Correct? That's the decision you made.
And were I to make a different decision,
Yeah, we heard
I could
that.
have had 4 dead divers, and I could have had 3, 4, 5 dead rescuers.
Right. Coulda, shoulda, woulda. Now, you made no decision for rescue. Is that accurate?
We did not.
Listen to my question so that we could move along nicely and not be told that we're running out of time. You made no decision for rescue.
I consulted.
Listen to my question, sir. It's very clear. You, sir, and your team made no decision to rescue.
Can I answer the question?
Yes, it's a yes or no.
No, I don't believe it's a yes or no.
Well, whether you believe it or not, I'm asking you yes or no.
But I am saying no, that is not a yes or no answer.
Well, give me your answer.
We consulted, right, based on the limited information we were able to get.
Yes.
We consulted with the dive specialist, dive supervisor, right, and they were not willing to go into the pipeline. They thought it was
Mr. Piper, with respect, those are the reasons why you decided not to authorize a rescue. They're not the answer to the question. Fairness to Mr. Ramadar, he's asking you, did you ever, in effect, authorize a rescue? And the answer to that is clearly no.
No.
Exactly. No. The reason why you didn't may be a perfectly good reason. It may be a bad reason, but that's different to the question he's asking.
Okay,
right?
Understood.
So he's asking you the question, did you ever authorize a rescue?
No, I did not.
No.
If you feel it necessary to add a but or a however, please answer the question first, and then I will allow you to make a but or however, providing it's not repeating what you've already said. All right?
Okay.
You appreciate that these men were in extraordinarily perilous conditions in that pipe.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Oxygen, air would have been limited, first of all, correct?
Yes, sir.
2, you do not know their physical condition in terms of the battering of their bodies, correct?
Correct.
3, in terms of drowning because either too much oil or too much water, correct?
Correct.
Right. And as we have all established and believe that time was the most critical, what shall I say, asset or value that you had. Time. Isn't it the most important thing?
And life, go ahead.
Yeah, right.
And responders' lives, yes.
We come into that. We have two sides to this, and I'm very fair, contrary to what many may say. You have two sides. You have the rescuers on the one end, and the men who, we have a countdown. You agree? There was a countdown to when we believe they would perish if they hadn't already. You agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Must have been a countdown.
Huh?
Must have been a countdown. So where
A
exactly
countdown. And as the moments passed by, the anxiety to get things done would have been increased. Yes?
The anxiety was always there from very early.
And it didn't increase as time was passing and nothing was happening to save them?
It must increase, sir.
Thank you. Well, that's the point. So, but you, what was the decision you made that was communicated? Stop the dive, isn't it? That's the one decision you've taken in terms of diving, to stop it, isn't it?
I went through this yesterday, sir.
Oh, gosh,
Yes,
I am here now.
yes.
You are here now. Just tell me very quickly. Don't tell me about yesterday. We're dealing with now. Right. Was it the only decision you took that you communicated in relation to dive or rescue is to stop the dive?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
But if I may explain, as I would like to, please. As I said yesterday, when I took that decision, right, I was advised, people were just diving into the pipe. We did not know what we were facing, right? People were going in there on emotion, right? People were going in there on instinct, right? It was, as far as I'm aware, just a sort of chaotic situation. So somebody had to step in. Somebody had to make a hard decision. And yes, sir, I took that decision.
Thank you. Now, you would have wanted to know, as you've told us painfully, to get cameras to go in to see what was inside there. Correct? You already knew water. The possibility of oil was real. Correct? You also wanted to see if there were physical objects within the pipe.
Oh, is that a question, sir?
Yes, it is.
Yes, sir.
Right. Logic will tell us that if you needed to know what was in the pipe, apart from the men and the plug, that all you needed to know what was in the chamber before the catastrophe, the accident. Isn't it?
Yes, so we wanted to know where the divers were.
Yes.
We wanted to know what sort of distance we were going, and we needed to know.
I'm asking about the physical items. If you wanted to know what physical items would most likely be within the pipe, you needed to know what was in the chamber before the vortex of the delta P, isn't it?
Yes.
Right. So did you establish what would have been there so you would have an idea as to what physical items were there apart from the divers and the plug?
Yes, so we knew all the tanks and so on,
Right.
and possibly chain blocks, right, spanners and so on. But we also needed to know where the divers were. We needed to know oil, distances, we needed several things we needed to know.
And this brings me to the point, and you fed into it. When Christopher took these very precious moments on the hospital bed to speak with you for the shortest period, you thought he was just old talking to tell you that he felt 2 welding seams? You thought that was loose talk? Or this is a trained diver who knows, because he was more interested in getting his colleagues out. You appreciate that?
Yes, sir.
So you discounted, did you, the fact that he counted, and it may have been a very deliberate action on his part, to measure out 1, 2. So therefore, you would have a clearer idea, if not an identical, accurate one, a clearer idea as to where in the pipe the men may be. You thought when he told you this, that was in loose conversation? You laugh.
No, sir, I am not laughing, sir.
I saw you.
Right?
Mr. Chairman, I mean,
Yeah, well, yes. Mr. Peterson, thank you very much, Peterson. Yeah, you didn't think that he was trying to get to you very important information?
Yes, sir. And
Thank
I said when we got the camera down to that distance, we did not see anything.
Well, blame your camera. But the blind person, Christopher, is telling you listen, and you know we're hearing this thing about go get him and go get him. Is that what you heard? That is all that he said? Go get the men, go get the men?
No, sir.
No, there's more. He says to Michael, go get your father right behind me. What we're hearing now, what do you believe that would have meant? He was a quarter mile away?
Yes, and Mr. Kirban did go down into the pipe.
Right.
And he did not see, there was no sign of his father.
How far in?
As far as we know, he went in about 10 to 15 feet.
Right.
We also sent the camera in some 80 feet, and we were not able to find
What time
him.
did you send the camera in?
When we got the camera, he
What
was
time?
not there. I think we discussed the times already.
I'm not interested in discuss. You tell me now. Manos here. What time?
I mean, in a court of law, we usually say ask and answered, but I wouldn't say that here. But I think ask and answered about 10 times. And I can't count well, but I know I had course 10, sir.
All I'm asking is what time the camera went.
Again, Mr. Ramadar, I don't mind you asking the question, even though we've had this evidence already.
Yes.
I don't mind you asking the question, and I'll permit it to a degree, but you've got to let him answer it.
Of course.
You know, you've got to let him answer it.
It's true.
And there's not a lot of point unless you just want to make a speech. And I've had my
You
say.
told me that I could make one later, so
Yes,
I reserve that
exactly.
position.
Not now,
I may
right?
decide not to.
Right.
But all I wanted to get from him, so that we refocus, is what time did the camera go in so you could know it went to 80
Well,
feet?
there are a number of cameras that were attempted, so let's
thank
be
you much.
clear. I think the earliest one was sometime after midnight.
There you go. So your camera did not see anybody after 12? Yeah. When around 5:30 is when you were told the man was right there.
And Mr. Kirban went in the pipe, and he was not right there.
Exactly the point. And you find this funny. The reason, of course, is he's there. His oxygen probably going, so he tried to go back to get more air in an air pocket. Is that not logical?
Sir, that's speculation.
Of course it is. But you didn't even bother to speculate about the proof of life and the possibility of rescue. You wanted certainty. And you talk about us in this room, you write your reports. it required immediate response to the facts that you knew them and then
Is there a question
educated.
is there a question in all of this, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, there is. There is. And yeah. And you see, if I don't do it, they'll say I'm unfair. In all of it, do you know what an educated guess is? You talk about speculation. What is an educated guess?
Please share with me.
Okay. An educated guess is when you know all that you do and you use your experience and your intelligence and trying to figure out what is the more probable situation and you act upon it.
Okay, thank you.
Did you use any educated guess in this effort or you wanted perfect information? Chairman can't help you. You got to give your evidence.
I'm assuming you're going to say you didn't want perfect information, but you've got to say something to it.
Okay. Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, sir, I did not want perfect information, but as I said before, this was no easy decision, and I'm still having to send a man in the pipe with no...
Well, I think what we can say, Mr. Piper, is this, isn't it? If you believed Mr. Boudram when he said he felt 2 welds, and each weld represents 40 feet, then the one thing you could say about that was that he was at least 120 feet into the pipe.
That was my
at least,
yes, sir.
Right?
That was my thought.
Assuming he was correct in his feeling of these welds. So his assertion that it was that distance as a bare minimum that he was inside this pipe, and the others with him. Right? You knew, in addition to that, that there were air pockets, because he told you that, correct?
Yes, sir.
And 2, at least.
Yes, you mentioned.
You knew from the other information you had that he was at least asserting that Faizi was right behind him, whether that's within the few feet that we're talking about or not. Fact is, he was saying he was behind him. The camera, as I understand it, only went in about 80 feet.
Yes, sir.
Is that right?
Yes.
Right. So the furthest that you were able to observe was about 80 feet.
Correct.
Which is obviously a good deal shorter than the 120. You had at least that information, didn't you, as to the condition of men and the pipe? As a bare minimum, you had that, didn't you? So I suppose what you're being asked is, did that feature in your assessment?
Yeah, right. So him touching, again, he is coming through this pipeline, right? Several welded seams. If you're coming through the pipeline, you will miss seams, right?
Listen, sir. Christopher is a trained diver. You ever went in a pipe diving?
No, sir.
So what are you talking about? He would miss seams. If he's looking for them, you don't think that he would also know that there'll be seams every 40 feet and therefore do a measurement? Like Hansel and Gretel, you throw your little bread. So you have a marker. You don't think that is what he was trying to communicate to you in this supposed conversation at 10 o'clock from the hospital bed? Yes or no?
Sir, when he spoke to us, right, how I interpreted, listen, when I was coming through, right, I knew I touched 2 seams, right? Yeah. So when we put together, he said, listen, 2 seams, that'll be at least 120 feet, beautiful. Right? But, right, I know this is when he was coming closer. My interpretation was when I was coming closer out, I touched the 2 seams. That was my interpretation.
So you took a godlike position that your interpretation would be correct and his would be wrong.
And sir, again, he said his father, Faizi was behind me. Mr. Kurban went down, he did not find Faizi, right? Remember, this gentleman was in this pipe. This is very difficult for this gentleman to give the idea of distance.
We heard this.
Yes.
But this is a live witness. who's telling you because you wanted to talk to him from earlier, got a few moments, and this is the thing he told you. You discounted that because he could be wrong. Right? Let's move on. Did anybody take an audio recording of what he is supposed to have said in that telephone conversation? An audio recording?
No, sir. We had several people listening. I didn't take an audio.
We'll deal with it at a moment. You have told this court that as information came in, it was put by ICT into a chat. Is that correct?
They were documenting it, sir.
They were documenting it?
Yes, sir.
You had a whiteboard up?
Yes, we had
Document?
a whiteboard up.
You'd be surprised that we have photographs of it?
No, sir.
No. Do you still stand by your word? I will come to that in a few moments. Remember, you're under oath, eh? Yeah. Who wrote on that whiteboard?
A number of people wrote on the whiteboard.
No, number. Give me the names. This is important stuff.
So as people were coming through the incident command system, a number of people wrote on the whiteboard, sir.
Give me the names of those who may have written on that board. It's not an open thing that anybody can just walk in and say, let me put a note here.
No, I may have written on the board. Mr. Randolph Archibald may have written. Mr. Fleming Holder may have written on the board.
Right. Tell all of us here that was the first location that any information is put, isn't it? And then later transcribed. Isn't that correct?
No, some of the information, but during as I said, we had a scribe at the laptop in entering information.
You're getting a little fuzzy there. You're talking about some. Are you saying that not all the information was put on that whiteboard?
Not all the information was put on that whiteboard.
Was all the information put by the scribe? With the scribe putting it on the computer?
Maybe not all. The information came to the scribe was putting in the information.
And who determined what information the scribe should put?
I would have spoken with the scribe.
You had control.
Yes, sir. I would have spoken to the scribe. Other people would have spoken to the scribe as information came.
You're the
it was not only me.
Boss man there, right? You're the commander. What a lovely, powerful name. Authority, okay, and responsibility. Did you observe on that board that from very early in the evening, that Paria, there are other issues, but I deal with this one now, that Paria had formed a view that the likelihood of rescue, well, they being alive was very slim.
Which board are we speaking of, sir?
The whiteboard that everybody writing on, including you.
Right. So, yeah, there was a whiteboard. There was a whiteboard in the conference room of the shipping office, which was downstairs. That was the initial incident command post, right?
Thank you.
As when I got into the incident command center, when I arrived initially,
you took the board upstairs with you. I'm asking because we don't have all evening, I have a timeline to work with. Calm down.
No, sir, I did not take the board upstairs with me.
So,
may I continue with the answer?
I want specifics. Were there a second set of boards upstairs?
Yes, we had a whiteboard upstairs.
And where was the scribe, upstairs or downstairs?
When, the incident command post, when it was first set up, the incident command post was downstairs, and as information came in, they were just jotting the information on the whiteboard.
All right.
As we went upstairs, there was a scribe upstairs, and they were jotting it down on their computer.
Jotting it down. Good.
Writing it.
All right. We'll deal with that probably in another even location. But let's deal with very important matters here today. Who gave you authority to make decisions about dives or to prevent dives? Who gave you, Mr. Piper, the authority to decide who should dive and who shouldn't dive, and consequently who should die and who should not?
Sir, I had no authority to say who should die and who should not. Right?
I started with dive. We'll come to the dying later. Who gave you the authority to say who should dive and who should not?
Right. So as the incident commander, right, the incident is under my control, right? So I had to manage the incident, and there are certain decisions that I had to take, right?
Where in the law did you get exclusive right or authority?
Well, I'm not sure.
Let me rephrase that. Thank you very much. Did you make contact with the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service as an example as to what was happening? I'll give you that to start.
I didn't make contact. I know we made contact with the TTFS and so on. I know we made contact with the Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard are the people who deal with diving matters.
Yeah. So the fire services were alerted, correct?
Yes, sir. That would be all emergency response and so on.
Thank you so much.
Right? And the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard, that is the authority we look to for diving.
Yeah. And who was coordinating among the national assets? Who was coordinating among the national assets as first responders?
Well, we were called the incident command. We had
Right.
people coming into the thing.
Thank you for that. So you took command of the Coast Guard.
No, sir. I did not take command of we were coordinating with the Coast Guard.
And who
I
were you-
cannot take command of the Coast Guard.
I see. So did the Coast Guard work together with you in terms of decisions you would have taken?
Yes, the Coast Guard
Thank
worked
you.
with me, sir.
No.
Right? But the decision, but I took the decision, sir.
Of course. And it was conveyed and executed by others. Isn't that correct?
What exactly you are speaking
Whatever
of?
decisions you made, you conveyed it to others, and they executed them.
I spoke to my people on site about not diving. Yes, and they conveyed it.
Oh, much obliged. Now, you kept repeating that you were accountable. Remember you said that in answer to my friend, that you would have been accountable.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. You, sir, were more interested in lives or liability?
Sir, I, of course, was more interested in life, including the lives of the responders.
Yeah.
Right?
But you
Right,
said
my priority is the
accountable.
safety of the responder. Yes, sir.
Accountable. That has a meaning to you. What does that mean
There
to
must be
you?
accountability, sir.
Thank you, of course. And you would have been held accountable either way. For instance, if a rescuer perishes, you agree with that?
Yes, sir.
You agree you're accountable now for the divers having died.
Well, that's for the commission to decide.
And a court, possibly.
Okay, sir.
Yes. Now, you took a decision, and I say you, I mean you and all the assets, your team, whatever, to have, what's the word for it? Where you blocked off the top of a certain riser at any time? A flange, thank you, Mr. Peterson.
Or
A cap.
a lid on top.
A lid.
Sir, can you repeat, please?
Yeah. You took a decision to cap off, to lid, to enlid, or to flange, right? The top of one of the risers, isn't it?
No, sir. I have no idea what you are speaking of.
All right.
Neither do I.
Let me help.
The lid was already on the riser at number 5.
Yeah. At
And
any
there
stage.
was there was a habitat with the downward pressure on 6.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
what is it you want to ask?
I'm going to ask now, at 6, was there at any time a flange put on the top of that pipe after the accident?
No, sir. There's no. This is the first I'm hearing about
No,
this,
I'm
except on
asking.
social media.
Hold
No,
on.
sir. No.
No, good.
At no point in time.
Right. But there was an extension of the riser.
Yes, sir.
To what height?
We extended it to above water.
Yeah. To what height from the sea bottom?
I'm,
From
no,
the
no,
top of the riser to the seabed.
Just a minute. How high was it above sea level?
It was about 5, 6, 7 feet above sea level. Yes,
Sea level. I'm asking now from seabed.
From the bottom of the ocean?
Yes.
Well, it would have been about maybe between 50 to 60 feet above.
50 to 60 feet. You know that young Christopher, it was from that pipe he was saved, that area, correct?
Yes, sir.
50 to 60 feet is a formidable height.
Yes, sir.
Good. Sir? You know, yesterday you were at pains to tell us about your experience of 45 years, and you had never experienced anything like this. That meaning people sucked into a pipe. Remember? You told us that?
That's correct, sir.
Yeah. And you were quite unrightly concerned, as we all agree with you, that will not be the most prudent thing for a person who is emotional or instinctual to dive in.
Instinctive, I think.
Whatever word, thank you. I'm so grateful. The British language is, not as respected here in some cases.
Well, we're all using it.
Yeah?
I quite like the vernacular, but never mind.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that so much, Mr. Chairman. Yeah. Look it up, Mr. Peterson. Yeah. Look it up, Mr. Peterson. You're never too old to learn. Yeah. So, you didn't want a person who was... let me get this clear now, Mr. Peterson. Is it instinctive? Am I permitted? Instinctive or emotional to enter the pipe? You agree with that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. You know the name Conan Beddoe?
Yes.
Highly trained, highly qualified, deeply motivated diver, correct?
Correct.
He was willing, right? I just wanted that you knew. He was willing, knowing all that he did from the years of experience that he had and the training that he had acquired to go into this pipe. You knew that? Yes?
I don't know how many years of training. I don't know he had ever done anything like this.
Beautiful. So the person who was presenting himself, did you make any inquiry as to his expertise? That will be far greater than yours.
Yes, sir, but again...
No. Just stop with the yes. So yes, you made inquiries. Did you then ascertain how many years experience he had? Would that have been important?
Sir,
Yes? Yes or no?
Sir, I'm still sending somebody into this pipeline
wait. No,
who would never have done anything like this.
You're not sending anybody. You're assessing now. Remember, you are the ASSESSORS, assessors, right? You are assessing the risk factor. You needed now, this man is saying he's not related, he's not blood related to any of the divers. You appreciate that?
Yes, sir.
So therefore, the emotive issue is diminished. Do you agree with that?
Okay.
He didn't just jump off a boat and dive in. He didn't. He was not acting instinctively. You agree with that?
I don't necessarily agree with that.
So you heard that he had jumped off a boat and tried to dive in the pipe?
No, sir. We were just going into the pipe without assessing.
Who?
That's instinctive.
You didn't assess. Did you know what assessment he made?
There's no... What assessment he would make, sir?
That's the point I'm asking you. Did you speak to him to inquire what he knew that you may not have known?
So we knew very little. We knew very little about the pipeline. He would not have known.
You knew very little.
Yeah.
And you took no action. You agree with that?
No, I don't agree with that.
You took action to rescue the men.
Sir, we were taking action to rescue the men.
And when did you take it? So you can avoid all of this.
This has to stop at some stage, sir, with the greatest of respect to my friend, Mr.
You forget your partner name.
Mr. Jamada.
Yeah.
Ramada. Sorry. This has to stop.
Mr. Gilson, I am doing what I have to do. Right? And my friend may be uncomfortable, but I think we're on a very important track here.
Now, I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to take 5 minutes.
Thank you very much.
We're going to take 5 minutes now. I would like you to confine the remainder of your cross-examination to 15. So think about it in the next 5 minutes, please, all right?
Thank you.
And you know, you do need to calm down a little bit, all right? I get the emotion of it, but you do need to calm down a little, all right? Please.
Since I was a teenager, they've been telling me that. Thank you.
for a client, so I need to be out of here by 5 to 5. I do not want this witness to be held over. So if we are not concluded by 5 to 5, you'll all have to wait until I've finished in the Court of Appeal and come back, all right? So let's try and concentrate on that. Thank you. Please do sit down, Mr. Piper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Piper, when we took the break, I was making inquiry of you about Conan Beddoe. Remember this?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. This is the person who was presented as a potential life-saving rescuer. You agree?
This is the person at this point in time.
Yeah.
Right, I'm aware.
What time was this? Don't forget we have an appeal at 5, so do hurry up.
Yes, sir. Well, if you allow me to answer the question.
Yeah. What time
Right.
did you become aware that Conan was willing to go into the pipe?
I became aware that people were diving into the pipe at about 6:25 on Friday evening.
Mr. Conan Beddoe, when did you become aware that he was willing to go into the pipe?
I did not get the name of the person on that night. Right? All I knew was people were willing to go into the pipe.
People saying like,
Yes, they had a couple of divers willing to go. One was Michael Kirban.
one was Michael Kirban. You had Catherine Balkisoon, your eyes and ears at the scene. You agree?
Yes, sir.
So at no stage did you know that there was a professional diver willing to go into the pipe? You say all kind of people. Let me talk about professional divers, commercial professional divers.
Yes, so we had other commercial divers there that night who told me no, shouldn't go in the pipe.
You listen to the no's. Let me hear about the yes. Yes to life.
So we are coming back to the same position where...
Sir, let me do my job. You answer and we will get through and his lordship will go to his appeal for 5. Okay? So, question. You did not know through your eyes and ears, whether it is Catherine or whomever at the scene, that there was a commercial professional diver ready, willing, able, and equipped to go into the pipe.
I don't know that there was anybody. I know somebody was willing, right? I know they had the equipment. They're able to go in that pipe. No, sir, on the conditions were unknown. No, sir, I didn't know they were able.
You didn't know. Did you care to know what they knew?
Yes, sir.
Good. What inquiry
Right.
did you make?
Sir.
What inquiry did you make?
So I keep coming back to the same
Stop, keep
place.
going where you want to go. Answer the question.
No.
Did you make an inquiry?
No, sir.
No, thank you
right?
very much.
At that time, I was trying to find out what was happening in the pipe.
You remember what
right?
you told
Because
us?
I still could not send anybody in that pipe.
You remember what you told us about the time countdown, yeah? Every minute becoming more
Yes,
and
sir.
more
I
precious.
still didn't have the information
Right.
about the inside of
And
the
when
pipe.
did you expect to get your information?
I needed to assess, sir. I still could not send anybody in that pipe until I get that information.
When did you expect to obtain the necessary information to give
I
you
was
the comfort?
trying my best,
I
sir.
didn't ask you that.
I
What was your timeline that you were
cannot-
No, we can't.
My lord,
Stop.
Could you ask him?
Stop,
Yes.
both of you, please. One person at a time.
Yeah.
You ask a question, you pause. You answer the question, then you pause.
Thank you.
Try and keep it brief, both of you, please.
Thank you. Could we, while we have...
Or I'll bring it to an end.
While we have this moment, to please advise the witness to answer what he's asked and nothing else. I am not here for a speech. Okay? What was it? Yeah. When did you expect to get the necessary information to give you the comfort to press the button, go, to get those men?
As soon as I could get my cameras down, sir.
Cameras.
Right, I could get the
And
information.
we've been through that before. You knew that they were hours away, the cameras, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you knew that at the time when you had a live, willing, able diver.
Sir, if I may, are you suggesting then with all the information I should just take the decision to be reckless? No, sir, I was not prepared to do that.
Yeah? You use the word reckless. You use the word reckless.
Yes, sir.
The lack of recklessness led to what? The
What
death
would,
of
what,
four.
would, what would recklessness lead to, sir?
Yeah. The death of 4?
So should I be reckless?
No, but you are using the word reckless. I'll come into that in a minute. Do you know because you have taken the authority and you're the decider, and you're the one who said no dive, that your decision to not decide or to stop the diving ultimately led to no rescue. You agree with that?
So can you repeat that?
Certainly. Your decision to stop the dive ultimately led to no rescue. You agree with that?
No, sir.
So you did cause a rescue?
No, sir. In consultation, that was not what stopped. That was not why we ended up with no rescue.
No.
We spoke with the rescuers, and nobody was willing to go into the pipeline. The professionals, right? Those professional divers, they were not willing to go into the pipeline.
Yeah.
My dive supervisor advised me the same, and all those things combined
And what
led
time?
to no
Sorry,
rescue.
I beg your pardon. I don't want to interrupt your
That was
longer
later
statement.
on, sir.
What time?
That
What
was
time?
later on, around midnight.
Around midnight.
Yes.
What was your timeline for death?
Sir,
What was your timeline for death?
we were saying about maybe 5 hours or so.
From
right?
what time?
Yes.
5 hours from
we were
what?
saying from about the time Mr. Bodram came out.
Right? So
Right.
you're talking 10.
Yes, sir, but
Right.
I
So
still
you-
could not send anybody in that
Yeah,
pipeline.
right, because
We're going over the same territory.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I know.
We've covered
Same
all of
thing
this.
over.
Can I, apropos your question, it might be helpful if you have your timeline in front of you. If you go to 1573, please. 1573, volume 2 of our corrected version of the materials supplied over the weekend. Do you see at 1855, divers and diving equipment arrived on site?
Yes, sir.
Right. Did you know who that was?
Yes, sir, it was, at this time here, that would have been the SGS Sub-Global.
Who?
This year was Sub-Global, to the best of my information.
Global?
Yeah. Subsea Global.
Subsea Global. CTRAD, yes. Thank you. Prior to that, had you heard the name Beddoe?
I don't know that I heard the name Beddoe.
What's the company again for Beddoe?
Yes.
He's a freelancer. Yeah. And his brother, it's Conan Beddoe and Conrad.
Conrad.
Yes. Had you heard about those two?
No, sir.
No one told you about those two?
I don't think anybody called that name. Sir.
Ms. Balkisoon? She didn't say anything about them?
I'm not saying she didn't, but I'm not recalling that if she did.
It's not recorded in this log. You know about them now.
Yes, sir.
You know them to be experienced divers, don't you?
I know
Very
that.
experienced divers.
I know them to be experienced divers. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. In fact, Mr. Beddoe was the diver on Sunday who came with Mr. Ali, right? And when we asked him about his experience did not include any dive like this. He said he had actually just.
I'm not sure that anybody's
Yes.
experience would include a dive like this.
What he said.
That is inevitable
Yeah.
in some sorts of accident type or emergency situations.
Right.
That's inevitable, isn't it? You
Correct.
can't have someone who's done it before. Someone has to do it for the first time.
Yeah. What he did say he had experience in was going like in just pump cases, which is like I think about 12 foot. I think pump cases. That is what he had,
Some
but not way
confined space.
inside. Yeah,
Some
just
confined space
right,
experience,
but nothing remotely similar to this.
And I think what Mr. Ramadan is asking, if I may say so, not unreasonably, is did you know that he was on site from quite early that evening?
Yes, I know they were on site from about when Mr. Bodram came up. We had people on site, yes.
Shortly after that?
Yes, shortly after that,
right.
yes.
There or thereabouts. And did you know that they had equipment with them?
I know they had the equipment when Subsea Global arrived. They had that.
All right, yes.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. And you made no inquiry as to the capacity of those who are presented within the timeline of life.
So again, we are coming back to, I had to assess the pipeline before. And so no, sir, right?
You did, no, hold on. Not on your pipeline assessment, about the quality of the personnel who had arrived.
No, sir.
No.
I think we've arrived at a position, again, Mr. Ramadar, I don't want to stop you unnecessarily, but have we not arrived at the position that this witness has made clear that irrespective of whatever else there might have been, he was not going to authorise a search of that pipe until he had a camera?
Which,
rightly or wrongly, that was his position.
Thank you.
So going over it again is not really going to improve it, is it? I mean, he's made that clear. Doesn't matter how experienced the diver was, doesn't matter what equipment he had, he was not prepared to take the decision for someone to go into that pipe without cameras footage.
Thank you so much. And I'm about to complete. In the similar circumstances as you sit here today looking back, you would do the same thing, wouldn't you?
When you say do the same thing, can you elaborate?
Of course. Do nothing to save their lives. Because you assess and assess. Well, let me help you a little bit. Did you ever assess that it was safe enough to go in?
No, sir. Once we spoke with the dive experts, and they indicated no, it was not safe to go in.
To go in for a rescue or a retrieval?
To go in for a rescue. They simply said they were not sending their divers in for rescue. I asked Mr. Seals to go to them and talk about going in for a rescue, and I was told when Mr. Seals came back, he said no.
Right. And forgive me if I have just...
That is in the early hours of the morning, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Long after your timeline for life had extinguished, isn't it?
Yes, sir, but we were still talking.
And you would expect that these men would know for the length of time, since 3 o'clock to, let's even give you 12 o'clock in the night, the likelihood of rescue was minimal at best, if not zero.
It was not eliminated, sir.
No,
we were still trying to rescue.
Of course.
And to be fair, you hadn't eliminated it.
I had not eliminated it, sir.
No, but you don't know what the individual diving teams had decided in their own minds.
No, sir.
With all their experience.
Correct.
They may well have eliminated it.
Correct.
And that may well have played into the reason why they were not prepared to dive.
That is possible, sir. But even earlier when I spoke to Mr. Seals, when he first came on, I showed him what was going on. With his experience, he said, Colin, this is too risky. You simply don't have the information. I factored all of that into, and plus,
you told us that, and I
yes,
had
sir.
that very well in mind.
Remember, I asked you whether you were more interested in lives or liability. Remember, you told us. I asked you that, yes?
Yes, sir, you did.
Right. Do you know what a disclaimer is?
Well, if you go ahead, if you care to explain.
No. I want to know if you know what a disclaimer is.
Yes, sir.
What is it?
Well, you say something to disclaim any
liability.
disclaim. Yes, sir.
Did you raise that issue with anyone? That, look, people are willing, there are men who are certainly going to die if I don't take action. That you want to go, I'm telling you there are tremendous risks. I do not advise this, but you can choose to and sign off a disclaimer.
Sir.
I'm sorry I intervene, but this is law, and I don't know if you could have a disclaimer in those circumstances legally. That is a matter which my friend can make submissions on if you could find law to support that at the end of the day.
That's true. On the other hand, I don't see any harm in being asked if he considered a disclaimer or if he was asked to sign a disclaimer. Whether or not it had any efficacy in law is a separate matter.
No, sir. I wouldn't ask. I don't think that really is a fair position to put anybody in. I don't think so. For a disclaimer, no.
Hold on. You're not putting anybody in a position, People are volunteering to go. You are saying, no, I need to assess. Right? You had access to Kenson. You had access to a number of Well, you had the resources of the state available to you to get advice, isn't it?
Sir, I wouldn't ask anybody to sign any disclaimer in
I
a
didn't ask you
situation
whether
like that.
you would. I asked you if you had access to advice.
Yes, I could have sought advice. I didn't think of asking for any disclaimer.
think.
I don't think that is a position somebody should take in something like this.
So that you accept responsibility one way or the other for anything that happens on Paria's estate. Is that accurate?
So I will have to get my counsel to advise me on that. I don't know.
Okay, just a minute. Let me ask you this question. I think it gets to where Mr. Ramadar wants to be. There is a difference between your saying to someone, please enter the pipe and rescue these men, right? Mm-hmm. There's a difference between that and saying to someone, I cannot authorize this. If you want to go ahead and do it, that's your business. But I cannot, and my advice to you and everything I've heard is this is completely wrong. You shouldn't do it, but I'm not going to physically stop you if you want to do it. There's a distinction between those two, isn't it?
Understood.
I'm not preaching one or the other. I'm simply saying that there is a distinction between those two. And I think Mr. Ramadar is asking you whether or not, in effect, you ever considered the latter.
Well, we actually did consider a disclaimer to OTSL, right? Correct, yes. Indemnity.
The guys who tell you, no, we're not going after midnight.
Yes,
is that accurate? Yeah?
Yes, sir, that was later on, yes.
When, in reality, I mean, let's be real. The likelihood that the men were alive, or in fact, the likelihood that they were dead was almost certain, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So, you appreciate that part of the contract, right? You're talking lawyer and thing, right? Part of the contract was, in the event of an emergency or so, LMCS was to provide what?
Say again, sir.
Are you aware as you sit there today, in this room, that part of the contract that Paria entered into with LMCS in relation to any emergency or accident is that they were to provide what?
Emergency response, sir.
And including
for credible scenarios.
Yes.
And this was not listed. This was not listed by LMCS as a credible scenario.
Sitting as you are today, the reality is not credible. The reality was of a Delta P. Is that not credible?
It was not presented by LMCS as a credible scenario, right, in the contract. It was not presented and it was not catered for.
So therefore it was not catered for, let the men die. Is that it? That is effective. No, sir.
No, sir.
No. Well, that is why I'm coming to this.
That's not what I'm saying.
Well, let me help you and tell me if you agree or not. LMCS, for whom I do not appear, came prepared at some stage with able, competent, willing, and equipped divers to do a rescue. You agree with that?
They had equipment and they had divers.
Right.
Right?
And it was your decision to not allow them to do the dive. Is that accurate?
Sir, it was my decision to stop the diving at that point in time when they were just diving. As far as I'm concerned, it was an instinct, it was emotion. I understand Mr. Kerwin was diving. I said, stop the diving at this time, let us assess.
All right,
I never said we were not diving.
Okay, you around 7 o'clock issued an edict, an order, an instruction that there should be no further dive. You agree with that?
Yes, we should not dive into the pipeline.
It was around that time that Mr. Conan and other divers, their brotherhood had come there, the coalition of the willing, ready and able, and it is your instruction that prevented any effort to go into that pipeline.
Yes, sir, because willing does not change the conditions in the pipeline.
Well, I will stand again. Did you ever know what the conditions were ultimately in that pipeline? Did you ever know what the conditions were?
No, sir, we did not come to that point.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Can I just, apropos what Mr. Ramadar was asking you, can you have, please, page 1548 of the supplemental core bundle? It's one of the documents that we received over the weekend from your office. Do you have that in front of you?
Yes, sir.
You can see from the top, it comes from someone called Narissa Fevek.
Yes, sir.
Yes, and who is she?
She was our communications person.
Right. And I think what she's done here is to record a meeting between a number of people, Mr. Mushtaq Mohammed, yourself, Arlene Chow, who I think head of Heritage, is that right?
That's correct.
Yeah, and then a number of copied in people. And it says subject matter meeting with LMCS 10:51 a.m. and that's on the Sunday morning, the 27th.
Correct.
Right. And on this day, you can see that it describes a number of attendees. All right, the venue is downstairs conference room, and the time between 10:51 and 11:38. So 3/4 of an hour or so.
Correct.
All right. Do you see then it has a subheading, Mushtaq and Paria?
Yes, sir.
And then after that, a few of the bullet points, say 10 or so bullet points down, there's a line which says this, any approval, can you see that? Any approval?
Yes, sir.
Any approval provided for the diver to enter, then a liability waiver will need to be signed. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
So Mr. Ramadar was asking you whether or not there was ever any issue about signing any waiver. He didn't put it like that, but that's what it, I suppose, amounts to. Was that discussed at that meeting on Sunday?
I imagine it would have been discussed. I don't fully recall. I don't recall, but if it's there, it would have been discussed on Sunday.
Because at that meeting was both Andrew Farah and Conan Beddoe, wasn't
yes,
it?
yes.
And so I'm assuming if it's there, it must have been discussed.
Yes, I'm assuming it was discussed. Yeah.
I mean, and I drew that distinction between the two potential scenarios where, on the one hand, you were saying, yes, please send a diver into the pipe to rescue these men, or on the other hand, saying, look, I'm against the idea of that. I think it's wrong. I think it's dangerous. We don't have enough information, but I am not going to stand in your way, as it were. There's that distinction that I sought to draw. In the latter situation, is it that scenario in which you were seeking some sort of liability waiver so that you wouldn't be held responsible, you, the firm, wouldn't be held responsible for what you would have regarded as an irresponsible act of trying to save somebody?
Right.
Is that what you understand by it, or is it something else?
Well, so I suppose as things settled, people were sort of thinking this, but at the time, no, I didn't consider that.
This is the one from Bert. Oh, right. Just a moment. Yes. You know somebody by the name of Ian Bertrand?
Ian Bertrand. The name is familiar.
He's the Chief Executive Officer of Offshore Technology Solutions.
Yeah, I know the name, yes.
Yeah.
Right.
OTSL.
OTSL.
One of the companies you consulted with, yeah. And did he at any stage, as far as you're aware, indicated that he would want from Paria or from your legal counsel standard indemnity in the event of any loss?
I don't know any discussion that would have gone on.
I mean, can I ask, did it ever enter into your consideration that you might permit someone to go into the pipe? I mean, permit in the sense of not stopping them from entering it without your approval, on the basis that they provided some sort of indemnity?
No, sir, because my primary concern was the responder safety. So I did not consider that at that point in time.
All right.
I was just concerned with the person's safety.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay.
Mr. Ramadal, is there anything that arises from that question that you'd want to ask? No, thank you. All right. In that case, then I'm going to ask Ms. Persod Maharaj if she has any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Ms. Piper. My name is Kamini Prasad Maharaj, and I'm representing LMCS Limited.
Good afternoon.
Earlier in your questioning, you mentioned that Kazim Ali was contacted around 9 p.m. and where there was discussions in relation to the installation of the riser extension. You recall that? You recall saying that?
Yes, Kazim Ali called me at that time.
Kazim Ali called you at that time. Now, I'd like to take you to page 1573 of the ICT records bundle. The fourth time slot from the bottom, 21:06 hours.
Mm-hmm.
You have there, well, the ICT records show that in discussion with Kazim Ali, Senior LMCS, Catherine Balkisoon on site, and the PFTC team, C. Piper, Mushtaq Mohammed, Michael Way, Randy Archibald. A decision was taken to install riser spool at berth number 6 to bring the end above water at atmosphere, and thereafter to remove the flange at the riser at berth 6.
Berth 5.
Berth 5, sorry. Information from Kazim Ali, LMCS. According to LMCS personnel on site, they were hearing knocking on the line below in response to knocking on the line above water.
Yes,
Right.
see that. Mm-hmm.
So I take it from this note that you would be in agreement that the information or the request for the installation of the riser was directly related to the noise that was being heard, the proof of life that was being had, as it is, from berth number 5.
Right. Good.
Yes.
Yes, and if I may, I did instruct my personnel to go at berth number 5, right? I think it was Mr. Visham Harichan, and it may have been Mr. Beckles, right? I instructed them to go at the berth number 5, right? They were there with the LMCS personnel, and they were listening out, and there was
And what
no
time was
knocking.
that?
That was immediately after this conversation.
All right. Can I take you to, and this conversation is around 9 p.m. in the night.
Yes, ma'am. Right, and they reported back to me. There was no knocking. They were there for about an hour. I told them to just stand by, right, and continue. But there was no sign of any knocking.
Thank you. Can I take you to paragraph 74 of your witness statement at page 1360? 74.
1360.
1360.
Paragraph 74. Yes, ma'am.
All right. You have in this paragraph listed the number of 9 conversations or 9 telephone calls with respect to Kazim Ali Sr. You see that?
Yes.
Right. 21:06 or thereabout. You would notice that there is no log for that timing.
Correct.
All right.
These are, if I may, these are the times from my call log. These had calls that I made, so those were recorded, right? That was from B Mobile. The calls received would not have been there, so that is why that call is not there.
Paragraph 75 says Kazim Ali Sr. also called me on more than one occasion.
Accepted. So I would ask you to turn to, please show the witness statement of Kazim Ali at paragraph 98. This is the at page 2872 of the supplemental witness statement bundle. Paragraph 98.
I'm not sure which one it is. Okay. Okay.
Good. You have that in front of you, Mr. Piper?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So this is Kazim Ali's statement in relation to the knock-in. And what he says here is that he was informed by Dexter that there were reports of knock-in at berth 5. Yeah? This is at 90, paragraph 98.
Correct.
Then at 99, he continues. At this stage, it would have been after 6 p.m. I called Piper and Mushtaq Mohammed. I don't know who I spoke to at first. I requested that we bolt the riser extension in order to do two things. One was to remove the chamber in order to more easily access the pipeline. The other was to be able to open the riser at berth 5. Mushtaq agreed. He said he would go ahead and make up the riser. Dexter, however, informed me that Catherine Balkisoon, who was at berth 6, said that nobody told her about this, and I assume they never related this message to her. So what he is saying essentially is that this conversation happened a lot earlier than you're saying in your statement and to this commission.
Yeah. Right. So
do you accept same?
I accept that he's saying it happened earlier, but that conversation happened around 9 o'clock.
All right. How long can you say did it take to have the riser installed?
We give the authorization straight away, and it took them about maybe less than an hour, because the riser was already inside the chamber.
And you have that recorded in your ICT.
Yes.
So straight away at 9 p.m., let's just take this back a little bit. Essentially, there were works that LMCS was being requested to be performed. Correct?
No, LMCS made that request.
Right. And at 9 p.m., they made that request, and at 9 p.m., that permission was granted.
Yes, we discussed it quickly, and we granted the permission.
All right. But in relation to all other requests for dive-in and all other aspects of a rescue, there was no immediate response.
Because every situation is different.
All right. So now, the blank at the flange at berth number 5 was requested to be removed. The installation of the riser was to be done at 6.
Correct.
Can you tell us or tell this commission that without the removal of the blank at 5 as requested by Mr. Ali and the installation of the new riser, whether or not there would have been access to any dive-in or rescue operations at all?
Right. So when Mr. Ali spoke...
No, it's a simple question. Would there be access to any rescue within the pipeline?
There will be access at berth 6. When we remove the intention was to install the riser and remove the top flange on the hyperbaric chamber, and the discussion was with Mr. Ali that we will lower somebody down in the crane if we needed to. That was the discussion we had at berth number 6. So there would be access.
But
right?
Wasn't there a bar across the top?
Mr. Ali mentioned that bar to us on Saturday morning.
So you were not aware that there was
No,
a bar
ma'am.
on top
No.
of that?
He never mentioned that bar until Saturday morning.
Mr. Piper, I'm going to put to you that the intention in relation to the installation of the riser was to open, whether or not it's right or wrong, was to open the berth at 5, the blank at berth number 5, because of the knocking that was being heard. The intention being that hopefully the men would have been seen, or there would have been some prospect of life to be had in a rescue mission at that end.
Right. So that was not the discussion. Mr. Ali said in the discussion with me, he said he wanted to put on the riser at berth number 6 in case the compressor failed. In the same discussion, he said to me, the men said they heard knocking at berth number 5, right, and they wanted to remove the flange. I sent my people at berth number 5 to listen out, right? I sent 2 people there. They spent an hour there. We also had discussions at the time with our technical people.
So
on,
they spent 1 hour at berth number 5.
Remember,
after you would have had the conversation with Mr. Ali about hearing the noise and the knocking, sorry?
I sent them at berth number 5. When they went to berth number 5, they were listening out for the knocking. They were also knocking, and they were not getting any response.
This was at 9 p.m. in the night.
This is when the request was made, right? I immediately dispatched them there, right? In conjunction with that, we told Mr. Ali we will get back to him on the blank. We told Mr. Ali we would get back to him on the blank because we did have some concerns in removing that blank, what would happen. So we spoke to our process people, and at the time they said they had too little information, right? And there was no sign, there was no knocking we were hearing. So at that time, they said to
Mr.
us...
Piper, you heard there was no report from Paria's personnel that there was any knocking or confirmation of the knocking being heard by LMCS's agents and personnel.
They were together with the LMCS personnel.
But you have permitted the secondary plan that Mr. Ali had proposed to you? The secondary plan in order to install the riser and to open the blank at berth 5?
Right. We permitted the riser to be installed, right, at 6. Good. When we spoke, we continued listening out. We were knocking the pipe, if I may. We were knocking. There was no knocking at berth number 5. Our guys were at that point with the LMCS guys at berth number 5.
We're going around in circles now. We're going around in circles.
Sir, the last question.
Please.
The last question is that at that point in time, did you understood the condition of the pipeline before allowing that? Because that has been the theme of what you have been saying to the Commission, that you didn't understand the condition of the pipeline, within the pipeline, if there was going to be a second Delta P, et cetera, right? Did you understand it at the time that you gave that permission, what effect that would have had? Having been very considered?
Yes, we had, at that point in time, we had to make some decision, and we thought, listen, this would be minor. Okay?
Oh, minor, okay.
We had to make a decision.
Is that right, Mr. Piper, that removing the downward force on the riser at 6 would have only a minor effect?
Right. So we knew that the pipe was full, and at that point in time, so we had to take some decisions.
Just a minute. You knew the pipe was full.
Well, the pipe was up to the riser in the chamber, which was not the full riser.
You knew it wasn't full.
It was about 4 feet or 5 feet below.
No, that's where the water level was, but you knew it wasn't full.
It was not full.
You've been told that there were air pockets.
Yes, sir.
So it wasn't full, was it?
Right.
Well, I suppose it's full if you include air with the fuel that was in there.
Yes, sir.
But I mean, as it stood at that time, before you agreed to putting this riser in,
yes, sir,
you understood, didn't you, that there was a plug somewhere potentially stuck in this pipe?
Yes.
That it may have been pressure on the other side of that plug up to riser number 5. And that's indeed why you didn't want to open the lid at number 5.
Correct.
But equally, there was a pressure the other side between riser number 6 and where the plug was.
Correct.
Which included where the men were.
Yes, sir.
And there was a downward force of the compressor on that liquid, wasn't there?
Yes.
And if you stop that downward force, did you think that that would make a difference to what was in the pipe?
Yes. We thought it would make a difference. We also thought opening at berth number 5 would make a difference. Yeah. We had to come to some decision, so we thought, let us put on the riser at berth number 6, continue at berth number 6. Once we weren't successful, we also had to come to a point at berth number 5, and we had to take that decision to move forward. So there were some decisions to make.
Did anyone consider whether stopping the compressor at berth 6 was likely to generate a difference in the pressure in the remaining part of the pipe between the plug and the top of the riser?
Yes, sir.
And that might mean that whatever air pockets were in there were going to be compromised.
Yes, so we had to consider that. Yes, we did consider that, and we had to move forward, right? So it was a consideration, right, at that point in time.
I mean, one alternative was, if your concern was, as expressed by Mr. Ali, that they were concerned that the compressor might fail because it had been going for so long. One alternative was to get another compressor, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
You didn't do that.
No, he actually had a compressor on the barge, right? But he made the request, right, to us, right? We discussed the request, and we decided, okay, because he didn't want it, if it failed on him, he would lose the chamber, right?
Yes.
But there was also a backup compressor.
Yes, ma'am, he had it, right?
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Mr. Piper, I'd like to ask you to switch your mind a little bit to address this issue of the contract between Paria and LMCS. Mm-hmm. Your position is that LMCS had a specialist contract, that's what you're saying?
Yes, they were a specialist contractor.
Right. And in having this specialist contract, they were to design and advise Paria in relation to methodology and how the work is to progress and be executed, as well as progress and execute the work. That's correct?
Correct.
All right. Would you accept that there is a difference between service contract and advisory contract? Because essentially, what you're saying is that they're performing dual function. They're advising and performing the service contract to Paria.
This was a turnkey contract where the contractor was supposed to do all his method statement and execute. This was a turnkey contract.
I've heard this turnkey concept before, but a turnkey concept, is it relevant or does it pertain to contracts in the oil and gas industry?
Yes, ma'am. They have many turnkey contracts in the oil and gas industry.
Turnkey, okay. So turnkey contract, that concept is that there is full control to the contractor. Is that true?
Yes, he comes up with his method statement and so on.
LMCS had full control over this contract?
Yes. They had to do all their method statements. We were permitting, so to coordinate with our operations.
No, but a turnkey contract gives full control. There is no permit in a turnkey contract.
Yes, but they are within our operations department, so they were supposed to do all their method statements with all the works, all their job steps, execute those job steps within our operations.
Mr. Piper, you would appreciate that a concept of doing a method statement is entirely different from having total control.
Yes, ma'am. They did all their method statement and they were executing the contract. We had no part of that execution of that contract.
Well, I appreciate you had no part in the execution, but certainly in relation to the actual development of scope, from the development of scope and the monitoring, that was part and parcel of Paria's responsibilities.
Paria just told them what we needed to do, which was to change the riser. They had to develop their method statement, right, and then execute the job, ma'am.
All right. So you will not accept that there is a difference between a service and advisory contract.
I will accept that this is a turnkey contract.
So it has
And
no
they were
component. It
executed.
has no component of advisory and service aspect to it.
Well,
When you're developing a method statement,
yeah. I did, ma'am, that would be your, I would say, deal with technical and maintenance. I had no part of that contract, so please,
okay.
yes.
So I will take that cue, and I will not go further with this witness on this point, but it is certainly a point. And who, may I ask, will be presenting in relation to the contract, the specificities
That contract
of
comes under the technical and maintenance.
Okay, so we will speak with technical and maintenance. Forgive me for switching, but I have the tail end of the question in. So I'd like to take you to your experts that you had advising in relation to the dive, in relation to the rescue. And I'd like to take you to paragraph 53 of your witness statement. Right. So at your paragraph 53, you say, Paria did not have the required knowledge of or access to competent, experienced divers, diving contractors, and or confined space entry specialists. This expertise was required to assist the ICT in assessing the feasibility of attempting to rescue the divers from inside the pipeline and to advise the ICT and on the most appropriate rescue option and method and risk and precaution associated with the said options and methods. This is your statement, right? So there were 4 things that you were looking for from your experts. That's correct? This is your statement.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. And I'll just repeat it again. Appropriate rescue options, methods, risk, precautions associated with the said options. Yes?
Yes.
Did any of your experts provided any of those 4 things to the ICT?
Yes, they, 1 second. No, ma'am. I cannot say they provided, right? When we went to them, right, they would have assessed it, and they came back to us and said it was too risky.
Thank you. That would be all.
Thank you very much.
I have 2 quick questions, sir. You'll clearly be able to finish.
I've managed to secure a few more minutes.
Yeah.
So you're
only 2
right.
questions.
Thank you.
Mr. Piper, we heard that you gave the instruction not to dive to Ms. Catherine Balkisoon, to pass on,
Yes, sir.
not to dive into the pipe. Do you know if, notwithstanding your instruction, I think Mr. Ramada referred to it as your edict, that diving continued?
Yes, sir. Diving continued after that instruction.
Yeah. So you were ignored, basically.
Yes, sir. Instruction was ignored.
And just one more point. I was attracted to the issue raised by Mr. Ramada about waiving and waiver and giving indemnity for civil liability. That must be civil liability he was referring to.
Well, I could only assume, sir.
Did anybody discuss with you that you were exposed to criminal liability if you send people into an area where they die?
Well, I would imagine that I would be exposed sending somebody in there.
And I know the DPP in Trinidad don't pause.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir. That's all.
Good afternoon, Mr. Piper. I'll try
Good
to be
afternoon.
quick. I just want some clarity on your response to the incident yesterday. I heard from your on-scene commander. That's the title for her, or on-site?
She was more Operations Section Chief, yeah.
Operations Section
Yes,
Chief
and then,
on-site. One thing that didn't come out powerfully, she said that she was on site from 1800 to 0600. As the incident commander, was she relieved? Did she hand over, or her duties were finished on site managing the incident at 0600 on Saturday?
No, sir. Catherine actually stayed on site until about 6 o'clock on Saturday evening.
Well, according to her, she said yesterday she finished up at 0600 Saturday morning.
No, she was on site up to she was at the incident command on site. She may not have been fully on site at that time, right? But she left Paria compound at 6 o'clock in the evening.
Okay, so
Right, yes.
who did you have managing the incident or an extension of the IMT on site at 0600?
I can't recall at this time.
Okay, so
Who she, when she left, I don't know who she would have asked to hold on for her at the time. I don't know at this time.
okay.
Yeah.
I hope you would have an appreciation of having ICS training.
Yes,
that
sir,
someone on site, they left site without any handover. So how was information on Saturday morning feeding back into the IMT?
Yes, I know she was also still liaising, but at this point in time, I can't say who was on site.
I'll just push it a little further. How was information from on site, Bird 5, Bird 6, feeding back into the IMT in service of tactical plans, situational updates, awareness, or a rescue plan from 0600 on Saturday morning?
Right, so at that time, I can't say at this point in time how that was being fed back. But I know Catherine Balke soon continued to send people there and so on.
Okay, so having ICS training, that sort of information needs to come into you as the IC.
Yes.
Okay, so for a whole flush of the day, Saturday, what you're saying is you don't have no information from on the site or updates?
Well, we had people back and forth on the site. I'm not saying we didn't have any information from the site.
Okay. All right. One last thing is, in the interest of being quick about it, I saw in paragraph 16 under your roles and responsibilities that you have to implement HSEQ standards and facilitate adherence to same.
Yes.
Yeah. In your experience of doing that, have you ever heard about bridging documents, or have you utilized bridging documents at Paria?
No, not really.
You know the concept of bridging documents?
Well, if you explain, I might.
So essentially, you have your safety
Yeah.
philosophy or your
Right.
safety management philosophy or your management system. The contractor has theirs.
Right.
So as per my friend, whether it's a turnkey contract or what, the philosophies need to be understood, and one unified philosophy of executing the work needs to be understood under a robust safety management system.
Right. So what we do when the contractor provides.
In the interest of time, sorry to cut
no,
you.
I'll be very quick.
Yeah, okay.
What we do is the contractor provides his risk assessment, all his credible risk, his emergency response plan, and then the HSE department marries those two with Paria's emergency response.
Okay, so in the interest of time, I'm going to move on. And under the emergency response plan, LMCS's response plan, you indicated that you review and accept when you've given the turnkey contract or given the contractor full control.
The HSE department does, yes.
Right, but in reviewing, and how do you constitute acceptance of something that you don't have competence in?
Well, the HSE department, they look, as I mentioned, at the obvious risk, right? They looked at the obvious risk, and that would have been mentioned, and that's how they review.
Okay. But would you accept that part of that is auditing how do you test the system? So they've presented you with an emergency response plan.
Right, yes.
Did the HSE department test that emergency response plan to see how effective it is?
I don't know if they tested the plan at that time. I don't know if they tested the plan at that time.
And I'll finish here. Since you have the responsibility for HSE and reviewing it and ensuring that those standards are implemented, have you reviewed the incident reports, any lessons learned, and anything going forward out of this incident that has already been documented,
Yes,
implemented, such as?
Right. So what we've done is we've improved the contractor management. When he submits with his contract, we improved that. We started looking at the last 3 years documentation, not only his management plan, right, etc.
Let me get right directed. Did you see any gaps in your IMT that needed addressed?
Yes, there are gaps to be addressed.
To be addressed or being addressed?
Well, being addressed, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I'm sorry that we're pressed. I've managed to secure a few more minutes, but there's just one more thing I need to ask you, which arises from what I asked you at the end of yesterday. You remember,
yes,
we adjourned yesterday when you were standing in front of the screen trying to explain to us, or explain to me at any rate, how it's possible to put 1 pint in at one end and get 2 pints out at the other.
Yes. Right, so
have you been able to give any thought to that?
I've been able to give any thought to that. I have thought about it. I don't know if I'll be successful in the explanation. You're moving from one pipe into another pipe. If you have a full plug, then you should. If you move one barrel here, move one barrel there. But if you have in any way you're moving from different sizes, different line sizes.
You see, this is where I struggle. I don't see how it can make any difference at all.
Yeah.
You might start off with a little pipe this big and end up with something that's 20 feet wide. It seems to me not to make any difference. If you pour 1 pint in at one end, how can you get more out at the other?
Yeah.
Because I'd like to know that, because I would put a bar of gold in that end and try and get 2 bars of gold out at the other.
Liquid, sir. Yeah. Once, if for any perchance you get any blow by in that liquid, right, you could maybe pick up liquid in the other pipe. It's just difficult to explain.
Well, I mean, I can get it. Some marginal difference might exist for any number of reasons. I struggle to understand you get more. I could readily understand getting less. I do struggle to understand more, and I struggle even more when I think of the amount more that we're talking about. You know, moving from the sort of 80 barrels that we were speaking of yesterday to the sort of 400 potentially at the other end.
Yeah.
I really do struggle to understand.
And that is why it was always the dip on the line that we were considering.
All right. Well, I hear what you say. Thank you very much. Mr. Piper, I appreciate you've been in the witness box a very long time. Thank you very much indeed for coming. We are now adjourned until the 4th of January at 10 a.m., yes. The best suggestion you've made all day, if I may say so. So 10 o'clock on Wednesday, the 4th of January, please. You will have probably later today or tomorrow morning at the latest the schedule of witnesses for that Wednesday. What is it? Yes. Mohammed, I think, is going to be here on that Wednesday, and Mr. Yearwood. But anyway, it will come up on the screen. You will have it all available to you, if not by today, by tomorrow. Thank you all very much. Right.